a playlist original.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 200 of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. And he's not here. No, he's here.
Yes, of course I was going to make this milestone episode. Not a chance I would miss it. It's been nice to be on a little bit during Tales of Horror. And I know my schedule's been a little inconsistent, but this has been something that obviously those who are regular listeners know that we've been anticipating for quite some time now. Surreal that it's finally here. We just did the calculation. It was only just over a year ago that we were doing episode 100, and that was quite the milestone. And I think we had that conversation about, when will 200 come? And geez, it felt like no time at all. Yeah, very quickly. So
very, very fast.
That was June 2023.
We are cranking them out too quick, or we're just very excited about the content that we have and want to put it out there. But I mean,
I'm sure it's the latter.
We're having a good time though, so it makes it a lot easier. And I'm glad that the last 3 episodes you actually will be on, like, release schedule wise. So like by the time you hear this, you've already heard Creep and The Hitcher. So you'll have Jackson on for 3 in a row. So I'm glad that timing worked out. I've had to push our guest episodes back, but they understood that. I let them all know.
Nice.
Like, hey, I can't make any can't release your guys' episodes yet. Ask 200. And they understood that, of course. So thankfully we got this done now, and doesn't really mess with the schedule too much. And it's exciting. It's a lot. Someone asked me how I felt about it the other day, and I was like, it's been a lot of work, but it's been really it's been fun though. I mean, it's had its ups and downs, whatever. But I mean, it's mostly been up since you've been on here, so that is good. And
absolutely, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of work too, especially on your end, even more so now with me being away. So hats off to you, my friend, for all you've been managing, especially in my absence.
Well, no problem. And I mean, it's a lot easier knowing that, like, once you're done, you'll have something really cool to come back to. So that is good. And I've kind of like gone back and forth, like, I wonder if chemistry is gonna be weird doing these episodes with all these different guests and stuff, but it's been fun and it's been fine. I mean, they bring like a different energy to it, and they kind of keep things interesting until you can come back. Running news is not the same though. The couple of times I've done it, like they've been great, but it's not. I think the riffing back and forth is just different off of that.
Totally, yeah.
But the individual movies, like for Tales of Horror, that's been easy because the people have, they've chosen those films and they feel passionate about those movies, so they have a lot to say about them. Right. I did a lot yesterday. I recorded a lot of episodes yesterday. Did 2 with Mark and did 1 with another guy, and another one with another pod that hopefully they'll all be out by the end of October. So
right on.
They're just sitting there. They're all sent to playlists, which is they're excited about that. Everything I've done so far, I've sent to playlists and said I will give you dates on some of those other episodes without Jackson, but they're all there. They're all uploaded. If you want to start editing them, you can. And they've been really excited about that because they're ahead of the schedule a bit. So,
right.
That's fun. But yeah, it's a crazy amount. Like, I feel like we've celebrated a couple of milestones on the show, right? You did 100 with us. Were you here for the year? I believe
that's right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if they all feel any different, but I think this one does, because it's just a lot of content. It's a lot of stuff. I mean, like, and yes, it's technically 200, but we have a spinoff that's built into the show. So
that's right.
That's 31 episodes, and then we've had like a few special episodes that we didn't number
that haven't been numbered. So this is really a lot. Really special number. But I'm interested too to hear what you think and your thoughts about episode 200, where you are the creator of this show that we've got going on. You've been here since the beginning. Did you imagine one day that you'd be covering your 200th episode on the show? No. Did you have ambitions that big back then? No.
Well, I had ambitions for it, but I mean, you've heard everything, so it's been like a series of like, there's one obstacle, now there's another one, and now there's another one, and before you, there were like 3 different co-hosts on here, and that was. I mean, you have to try to figure out, like, is it worth all the stress of like pulling people in and pulling people out, and if other people are going to be as dedicated to it as you are, because you can't expect some people to be dedicated to things that they didn't create or that they are not like the brainchild of, but that's how I've always tried to treat it as like, hey, this is not mine. It's like ours. I mean, it's
Right.
not, I mean, it was something that was given to me and I appreciate it. But it's a team effort and I can't do it alone. So, I mean, I try to make that clear from the beginning. But
And you
no,
have.
not in the sense of like, I didn't want to be here at 200. It was just, it's, I mean, a couple of years and a lot of episodes to do and a lot of changes. So I didn't, but I'm happy we are.
Absolutely. Great answer. So what's the next milestone that you're anticipating, that you're excited for the most?
Oh shit, I don't know. What would be the next one for us? We just gotta get through this year, don't we?
Yeah. True. Yes. Yeah. 2024 has gone by so quick, and be interested. I haven't really looked in a while about how many movies from our like most anticipated from the beginning of the year we still have left to see, but I know a lot of awards contenders are still to come out. So there's still lots to see, but like 2025 is right around the corner. Like,
yeah.
I
still have a lot. There's a few things I still have left I want to see. Some of the like film festival stuff that hasn't come out yet. Looking forward to that. So as far as milestones for the show, I just want us to get like better and continue to get better.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And reach more people. And I think we've been.
Yes.
I think what's really helped. And we've always had guests, but I didn't realize how powerful that can be when you start recruiting new people to be guests, and then their people are now listening to it, and you kind of reach a whole new like their audience too. And I did a couple episodes with the review podcast, which my friend David introduced me to. We did the guests deep dive together, and we did.
I saw that, and I was so not jealous, but I loved that movie, and to see that you guys had done it, I was like, oh, that's great. I would love the chance to jump in there, but fantastic movie.
Yeah, some of these I've been like, oh, I don't know if I should do them. Like we did Wes Craven's New Nightmare yesterday, and that was another one we did with the review podcast, and they are. I've only actually done episodes with Paul. There's two guys, but I've talked to the other guy, and he's really cool. And like there's a lot of like new people that we're kind of meeting right now that want to help us, because we're all kind of like in this boat together of independent podcasting.
It's a community.
Yeah, and so that's my hope, that we just continue to get bigger, better. We will probably be paying more attention to our YouTube page too, which has been hard to do because like we've both been busy. I think with like more time, I mean, what Playlist told me is that we can focus on that once you get over 200, and we get that out. So that's what's more important right now. And that, and you already have the audio show is already growing, so you can grow that other thing like on your own timetable, which is pretty true. But yeah, that's kind of what I want from us. I would love to like kind of bring more people on and like interview them and stuff too. I would
love to do some interviews.
I've been told that I don't
with that.
Yeah, I've been told I don't use my connections enough for that, and I have to use it more because I'm always like, oh, but what if they say no? And they're like, well, that's the worst they can do is say no.
Exactly.
But they're like, you have the connection, so use it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I would love to do more of that in the future. That to kind of expand on the like show being a new show that can also be a part of it. Have like interview segment with like whether it's up and coming filmmakers or especially independent filmmakers, that'd be really cool. And maybe other actors and stuff, people that work in all aspects of the industry. That would be fun to have people on. Do more episodes like we did with the physical media stuff. We can find more people like that to talk to.
Yes.
That's kind of the things I want. And of course, I know we'll talk about more things like when we get into the new year, like what we want for the show. I do think it's cool that all the things that we talked about for the most part at the top of the year that we want to change, we changed it for the most part and put and did all those things. There are a couple of things that we have to push back just because of scheduling, but everything for the most part we've done, I think, that we want to do at least.
I think so. Looking back at it, I think we've implemented some changes that have worked well. I know we got the hiccup of me being away for school and stuff that has definitely impacted the schedule a bit, but I'm really excited for that to be done because it'll be right around the end of the year. We'll be able to hit 2025, hit the ground running, and then implement, no doubt, the changes and things we want to keep doing for 2025. So really excited to turn that chapter by the end of the year and just round out this year. I know you'll be quarterbacking a lot of this while I'll still be away for school, but definitely anticipating being back on the show here and there, maybe every few weeks until it's over, especially with Tales of Horror. Like I definitely got to get my horror movie fixed too. So I'm still working on what episodes I'll join the show on for that, but it's going by really quickly. I don't know about in your experience, but where I'm at, it's long days, but really quick weeks. I'm almost at halfway done my program. So,
Yeah.
which to me is insane. It feels like I just got here, but yeah, before you know it, it'll be back regular scheduled programming. But super grateful to be able to join 200 for sure. This was an episode I was never going to miss. And I appreciate you moving stuff around so that we could both do this together. Cause I know we were really excited to do this and we got some interesting stuff to do today and to talk about. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I have to, as I'm releasing episodes, I was like, I have to pause them for a second. It depended on your schedule, but you were quick about it. I mean, we talked when we recorded the last time and you were pretty quick about getting back on for this. So
yep,
it's good. It's all worked out. 200 is different for you though, because you haven't been here since the beginning. So how does it feel for you? Probably a little different.
I still get that sense like this is a great milestone for the show, and I've been a part of it for long enough too that I got this sense of pride from it. But I look at it too as just like a springboard for where we're going to go next. I do feel like that 200 is a great number for us to use, like, for instance, getting people to come on to interview for the show, maybe potentially people we look at to sponsor our show. Like, that's a great number that we could use to our advantage. It just seems like we really got this thing under control and there's no signs of slowing. Like, every nice round number we hit, whether it be 100, 150, 200, and whatever lays beyond 200 is just more fuel to the fire for the show. And I really feel a good sense of, so what I'm looking for, just like a momentum going forward. So it always feels good to hit that nice round number. Right. I wish I could remember off the top of my head what episode I had joined on. But I'd like to know how many I've been a part of, but I could easily find that out. I just don't want to lose my train of thought, but it's been been a long ride.
I think I could kind of find it because I'm going to scroll a little bit. It's funny because I had a question that was like, what's the end game for the show? And I was like, end game, as if like, what do I want it to end? Or, and then I didn't know how to, I was like, I'll figure out how to answer it, I guess. But
I would never want it to end, but I would expect that it would evolve over years, no doubt.
Yeah,
maybe it will look different in the future, but as long as it's you and I and guests talking about the things we love to talk about, I'm happy with whatever that looks like.
Gosh, I'm trying to figure out when your first episode was.
Would have been December 2022.
Your first official episode just as a co-host was episode 68. We had a winter box office report card. There was some DC drama going on as well.
Right.
And we did our most anticipated movies of 2023. So
roughly 130, give or take a few episodes.
The episode that you guessed it on was actually not too far off from that. It was episode 66. It was December 29th, 2022. And it was about DC Studios. So both of your episodes, your first were about DC shakeups. And it was a long one. Your first episode was pretty long, but that's how I knew that you talked for a long time. So
that's right.
It was like over 2 hours.
I remember I was like, how this person, like, we've never really met off of like DMs, like, just talking on Instagram, and like to be able to hold that conversation for as long as we did. I remember thinking that flew. That was great start.
And then my friend was like, what happened to the whole like? My friend was like, what happened to the whole like guest host thing? I thought you were gonna do a guest host thing. I was like, I was, and then I think I found the guy, so I'm gonna go with that. Because he was the one that suggested it. He was like, just cycle people in and out. And I could have done that. It just would have been tiresome, I think.
It would have looked a lot like what you're doing now with the show, which I'm sure you agree is it's a lot.
It is a lot. I mean, it's great having new blood, I guess, but to do that every week would have been very difficult. So I'm glad I just trusted my gut and just went with it. And it worked out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So you've been on that. You've been on a while. That's crazy.
Okay, so a little over 130 episodes. It's pretty
and longer than anyone that started the show. So so that's spinoffs included. So that is crazy that you have been on more episodes than other co-hosts who were here like at the start. So,
cheers to us and cheers to 200, my friend.
Yes, I'm very excited for it, and I mean it's cool too because like we were like overthinking, I think, like what we should do for it, and like when you have so many milestones, it's like you just can't really. It's hard to come up with like fun things to do, and I think people just like this, and this part of it's fun. I mean, we did find something interesting to do for us as far as each picking a movie for us to check out for the very first time, and that was fun.
Something that we'd done before that I think was popular for the show, and I'm glad that we're doing this again. I'd like to do this again in the future, even too, because it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with the movie that you had me watch, and I have heard nothing about what you watched.
We haven't talked about it at all.
So I'm super interested to get into that. If that's how you want to lead, I know that there's some other things we have planned to say too, but I'll let you quarterback.
You know what? Since the movies are fresh on my mind, I guess we can start with that.
Fantastic.
I'll give you the honors of like saying what movie you chose.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
Me to watch.
So, those anticipating, I had Gaius watch a 2013 low budget sci-fi movie that I just watched for myself for the first time and second time this year called Coherence. Anybody that is familiar with this movie has probably got that itch of like somebody finally talking about this movie. So cheers to you guys. If you haven't heard about it, unfortunately it is a movie I would, and I'm sure Gaius, you can agree, let me know if you think otherwise, but I totally think this is a movie you should go in knowing as little as possible. Is that how you watched it? Because that's how I watched it.
That's how I watched it too. I never even heard of it.
Right. So yes. Which I was, I love that. I love when I can do that. It's very rare. So
the only thing I think the only thing I did was I looked it up on IMDb and then, little plot synopsis of it. And that was it. So
and that's not enough to really spoil anything.
Yeah. I didn't like see if there was any trailers or anything like that. I didn't look for anything to look at before I watched it, but I was surprised I had not even heard a thing about it. And I was like, how are the reviews? And the reviews were good. They're actually pretty good. And I was surprised that I recognized someone in it. That was cool.
There's a Buffy cast member in there, isn't there?
Yeah, the Buffy. Yeah, so that. But he's not recognizable enough that like it didn't throw off the whole vibe of like these are just regular people. So that was cool. And then I guess there's no real lead there. It's an ensemble, but one of the girls in it. I'm trying to see if I can find her name. She is married to Justin Baldoni, the blonde. I guess she's like the effective lead, who we end up with at the end of the movie.
Beth, the character.
Yeah,
Beth?
Yeah.
Really?
So she's married to him, and I only recognize her from like I had to cover that other movie that he directed, and
it ends with us with Blake Lively. Is that what I'm hearing? That name? Right. Okay.
Yeah. So the only reason I even recognize her is because during their whole like. He's not talking to the cast drama. He brought his wife, and that was the only person he really took pictures with on the red carpet. That's all. So that's the only reason I recognize her. I didn't know that she was an actress or anything like that. So that was interesting. But yeah, everyone else I had never seen before. I didn't know anything about the movie. So it was a nice little blind watch.
Yes, I'm really glad that you took my advice on that one. I knew you would. It's great though to go in and experience this movie for the first time. Before we get into what you think and maybe recap a little bit, I'll just tee up a little bit for those that are going to decide to listen and don't know much about it, or if you've seen it and it's been a while. It's like a mystery drama sci-fi thriller that centers on the IMDb plot synopsis is pretty quick. It just reads: strange things begin to happen when a group of friends gather for a dinner party on an evening when a comet is passing overhead. It's directed by James Ward Byrkit, who I don't recognize from anything else. He also wrote the movie, and his co-writer Alex, probably butchering his last name, Manoogian, also co-stars in this movie. And it was filmed for like I said, it was a micro budget. I think it was just $50,000. It only grossed totally 140 worldwide, which I think comparative to that budget is pretty decent. It almost tripled it. But I don't blame you for never heard of it. I've never heard of it either until my buddy Chris. He's moved out west since, but we've been friends for years and years, and we both like movies. I would say to like a different degree, but we do chat movies every so often. And he's like, man, you really got to watch this movie, Coherence. It's like, this little nothing movie nobody's ever heard of. It's on Prime Video. So he visited for the first time in a couple of years back in April or May of this year. And of course, we threw that on one night, and I was floored. I was so impressed. It was much better than, because we've disagreed on plenty of movies that I love, he doesn't love. And so I was like, okay, I'll go and take his hype with a grain of salt, but I'll definitely give him the benefit of the doubt and maybe I'll enjoy it. But I really, really enjoyed it. It floored me. I gave it a 10 out of 10 on my first watch, just simply because of how impressed I was with how little they had to work with. And as we get into the conversation, I'll probably have some stuff to add. I'm not sure how much digging you did in to the production after you'd seen it, but when did you see it, by the way? How recently did you watch it? Because I watched it 2 or 3 weeks ago now.
So I've watched it twice. I watched it I think I watched it when I don't know if I thought we were going to do this earlier, but I watched it then maybe a week or so ago, and then I watched it again yesterday.
Nice. Okay, so we've both seen it twice then.
and then I looked up some stuff after it was over.
Okay.
And I I was impressed by how there's very little. I mean, it's so bare bones there. They have nothing. We're working with absolutely nothing, and that fact they could generate that much like tension with not much
And
going on,
intrigue.
and
Yeah.
intrigue. I mean, I was reading some reviews on IMDb, and like some people were like, "You're either gonna like love this or hate this," because like
Yes.
because they're like it lacks, it's a cerebral, like I guess sci-fi movie. It's more of like a mind thing than there's like not a lot there's no special effects really at all.
Nope.
It's just them in the house, and
Yeah.
and you're just with
essentially
these,
a one location movie.
Yeah, occasionally you step outside, and there's some like nice little things that happen when they do, but yeah, it's just I appreciate what they could do very little. It's interesting because like Mark and I talked about Saw yesterday for its 20th anniversary.
Oh, there you go.
That is a movie that started as a short film that cost $30,000 when they did it, and they couldn't sell it to anyone in Australia, so that's why they came here to LA, and eventually they did sell it, and now we know what Saw became, right?
Exactly.
So I love stories like that of like making movies for absolutely nothing and making the most out of like what you have. And
agreed. I thought you'd appreciate that aspect of it too.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, it doesn't even look like a cheap movie. I mean, it looks like a really good looking like film. And I was also impressed by like the performances in it too. I think it's only shot over like a matter of days. It wasn't shot that long.
Right, exactly. With a 5-page like script, not even really a script, more like an outline, and a lot of it is improvised.
Yeah, the improv most of it.
Yeah, the reason I brought up the co-writer, I'll just refer to him as Alex, so I don't gotta keep butchering his last name. But so he's also co-stars in this movie, and he was in there to sort of like guide the performances along if people kind of got off track from their directive, which I thought was super cool. That it doesn't look at all like they're improvising it. In fact, like the dialogue and performances all seem like eerily natural. It doesn't seem like acting at all, which I just thought was super impressive, considering a lot of these people are like relative unknowns. I know you knew a couple of the actors. I didn't recognize a single face while watching it. And again, was super impressed by all the performances.
Yeah, that's the most impressive thing about me when I hear like, a majority of movies improv, because you have to all be on the same page about where the direction of the dialogue and the action's going. So the fact that like this was mostly improv, and the pacing of their discussions and how on track they are is so concise that is what impressed me too. Like you would have guessed this was a scripted movie on some level. I mean I know like a lot of like I won't call this like a found footage, but it has like the kind of vibe of a found footage movie where it's supposed to come off as if it's real.
Right. It's shot handheld, right? It's pretty intimately filmed. Yeah.
You're using virtually like unknown actors, unless you watched like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I had no idea he was going to be. I even looked at the cast list and I recognized Xander's voice from anything. So I was like, whoa, I think I had my head down there. I looked at my phone for a second. I was like, that sounds like Xander.
Just to confirm, is it the guy that plays Mike?
Mike, yeah.
Mike, okay.
Yeah, and actually, and I guess to his benefit, Nicholas Brendan has a identical twin brother that they use for the scenes where they needed to be like, I guess, together, or where they have to like use both of them. So like, and they actually have done that on Buffy too, where they had a whole episode where Xander like formed a twin, and
wow,
and they used his identical twin brother for that. But yeah, I mean, it's virtual like unknowns. I didn't know who they were. I tried to look them up after the movie to see if I recognized them for anything else, and I really hadn't. I mean, I love when movies like when they feel like real people and they feel like real like
lived in characters
that we can know like in our day-to-day lives. And I guess what I loved about the movie more than anything is the growing sense of like paranoia, and they played that really well. And that kind of got me unsettled and uncomfortable. And there were just moments in the movie where, as they're discovering like little things that are happening and going on, like I'm intrigued by what they're discovering, and then trying to figure out like what that all means. And I don't, it kind of kept me guessing, and I really like that too. Again, I just love that they weren't working with much, and they were able to do a lot with it. And that was impressive.
I remember thinking too, like, again, like I mentioned, it's for the most part a one location movie, and you're dealing with the same set of characters in this one house, and for the most part in the dining room or the kitchen. And I remember thinking of several times, like, hey, we've been in this location. They've kind of been reacting to the last bit of information that has totally upended their realities. where can it go from here? Like, what is logically the next step this movie can take? And time again, this new bit of information would be introduced that flips everything on its head again and pulls you back into the mystery. And I was just like, how is it doing this to me? Like, I just don't. It's been very few times that a movie has really pulled the wool over my eyes and then lifted back up again, and to the degree that Coherence did. And yeah, I knew right away. I had that, you watch a movie for the first time and you have that urge to rewatch it almost immediately. Like, that was Coherence had that effect on me. So I knew right away, it's like, okay, if I got to talk to Gaius about this movie, if we don't watch it together, I at least need to let him know about it. And I was glad to hear that you weren't familiar with it, because it fits in perfectly for an episode like this.
Oh yeah. And so when you had your friend seen it first before you saw it?
Yeah. I don't know. He'd seen it a few times actually.
Okay. And were you trying to guess what was going on or how things were gonna? Are you just
as far as guess? I don't think I really had the time to. I was like in it with the characters, trying to figure out what was going to come next. All I really knew going in, because again, he was like, "You don't want to know much about it." He kind of alluded that it had something to do with quantum mechanics, which I only had a very, very broad understanding. I wouldn't even say understanding is the right word to use there, but I was familiar with the concept. I've watched a few interesting videos that kind of dive into the field of quantum mechanics before, at a very, layman's explanation of it. But I was definitely familiar with the thought experiment of Schrodinger's cat just from school. It's a really popular thought experiment. So that is a big part of this movie that kind of paints the picture for what the characters are sort of going through and experiencing throughout the movie. And that was one thing on that note that I wanted to ask you, if you were familiar with that thought experiments at all, if you'd ever heard of Schrodinger's cat before watching this.
I had heard of it, but not not enough to really I had to go and after it was over and look things up and
right.
So I felt like it was interesting because I was learning. I was learning things as I was watching it.
I didn't have the time to try and guess what was going to happen next.
Also glad that it wasn't talky, preachy, basically we're talking about this kind of really smart thing and
high level concept of
physics. I'm glad they weren't trying to talk down to the audience.
It's very, very accessible, accessibly explained. Yeah. And I like that none of the characters are in that world. We get all that information from a character's brother who is a physicist who's not even present. And so they all seem to have the very basic understanding of what's going on. And I like that there's not even a person to do the exposition for what's going on too. They're kind of in it for themselves and figuring it out as they go along. It made you feel like you were in there as a fly on the wall as an audience member, which I really thought was well handled.
Yeah. I also love and it's going to be a weird comparison, but bear with me. It this was the first movie that came to my mind. It reminded me of how something like Cloverfield starts, where it's just a regular day. It's they're having this going away party.
No, that's a great comparison.
And so there's this going away party, and that's what you're kind of focused on in Cloverfield. Before the big fucking monster shows up or all the destruction happens in New York City, it kind of disarms you a bit because all right, so then the characters have to be interesting if they're gonna throw you into this whole this party setting or these people. So this movie did the same thing where it's not a long movie at all, but it took its time actually allowing you to get to know everyone that was there.
Yes.
And I think that is what helps with the whole improvisational thing because they all felt very natural and it was easy to get to know them. And for the most part, they're they all had some of them had things that were like Mike gradually gets a little annoying. But for the most part, they are very likable and lived in people. They feel like people I could have known or been around at some point. So I think that kind of helped. I love that it starts out with not about the event. And then just the event just kind of takes place, and the event is not a huge deal. It's just something that it's talked about. They know about it. They're discussing it. But I love that because of the limitations of the budget and everything, we don't see a lot of these things going on. And they kind of cleverly do it with the lights going out and their phones dying and all that kind of stuff. So it's all simple things they do to let you know that something's not right. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of throw you into the other part of the story.
Totally. I love too the setup that the character of I can't remember if it's Emily or if she goes by M as a character. Emily Baldoni is the actress, but her character as sort of the de facto comet expert around the dinner table where she's kind of explaining some other historical like events that happened as a comic was going over, like, 100 years ago or so. And I love how that you're forced to kind of sit with that later in the story as we realize what's happening because of the passing of this comet and how it's affecting these characters like reality. And like it makes sense. It puts context to this wacky sort of phenomenon that occurred in this innocuous story that one character happened to tell at the beginning of the movie before we had any idea what was about to happen. It was fun just to think back and think, did the people back then go through the same thing when this comet passed? I just thought that was a really interesting thing to consider.
I was also wondering too when I read because I only read the plot synopsis on IMDb. I was like, how are they gonna do this? Like, I mean, because once I'm watching it, I was like, oh, this is a very small movie. This is like intimate. Like, looks like there's no budget. No, it looks good, but it looks like they didn't. It looks like we're gonna.
You can tell they're not working with much.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna be sitting in this one location. So like the plot synopsis sounds bigger than what you're seeing. Because it's the whole idea of like, this comet passing over and like, but I loved how simplistic they made it though. Like, once that happened, they give you an indication that it would mess up something like it did, like it messed, like the lights go out and like their phones break, either they die or they completely break or whatever. And they did it with little things like that to, when you can't really do anything with special effects when you have a sci-fi movie dealing with the overhead passing of a comet, you have to find other ways to like make that work with very little money, and I think they did that. And I actually we don't get a lot of cerebral sci-fi movies. What was the one on Hulu? That one on Hulu had like more special effects with it. That one was it No One Can Save You, the one with the girl in the house.
Oh yeah, I still haven't seen it, but yeah.
That does have more effects in it, but it's also more simplistic, kind of like just in like primarily one location for the most part. And she doesn't really have like dialogue really either. So like you're dealing with that too. So it reminded me of that a little bit, but even that had more money to work with and more effects in that. And this didn't. I mean, like you could have easily made this with your friends,
and that's essentially what they did. I think they filmed that at the director's house over like 5 days. Yeah.
So I was impressed with that. And then also when you don't have the money to kind of build up the sci-fi stuff, I like that they built up the character stuff more. So like what's going to happen when you're in a situation like that, when you start to gradually not trust each other and all these weird things are kind of happening when certain people leave the house and they come back and things are off, you're going to really start to not trust each other. And so the growing sense of paranoia becomes a little bit more of, it's not scary, but a nice little like psychological thing to kind of dive into, because they seem like a really good tight group of friends, and then eventually they kind of turn on each other. Like some of them really turn on each other in a sense,
right?
And like that's what would happen though if you were kind of held back by we don't really know what's going on. We shouldn't leave the house. When people have left the house, they come back wrong, and something comes back not quite right. It's interesting because I'm trying not to say anything without giving too much away, but it came out in 2013, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people haven't seen it just due to the nature of it being like a really small indie movie, but like it's hard not to talk about and have a meaningful discussion about it.
Yeah,
which is why there was a warning.
I think, I think I audibly gasped when you already get the sense that like, okay, like when who leaves the house first and gets like the bump on the head?
Hugh.
So
Hugh
like,
and Amir both leave, yeah.
So and he comes back and like, yeah, I'm thinking he's off because like he has a bump on the head, but something just seems not right about how they come back. And I think I like audibly gasped when he's writing out the like the note on the piece of paper, and as he's writing out that note, I remember if someone's like reading it or they find like the exact thing that he's writing
is left on their door.
I left on the door, and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. And then I didn't know what I just audibly gasped. I was like, oh, I'm like, that's kind of cool.
That was a nice ocean moment.
Yeah, I was like, okay, like we're dealing with like possible like doubles of these people, and that's what's going on. And so that scene made me audibly gasp. And then when I think there's 4 of them that decide to go out to the other house with their glow sticks, and the house that we're in, the main people, they have blue glow sticks, right? And and then they see like in the distance, exactly I think 4 other people who have red glow sticks, and you can't really see much of them. They're just like covered in like shadow and darkness, and that was creepy too. I mean, just like little subtle things like that kind of like that the filmmakers did to elicit that kind of fear was really good. And that you don't even have to see them to know that, oh yeah, that we are dealing with like just other versions of themselves being
right
at this other location because of this event.
Yes, and I love too that initially, like, you think it's just one set of duplicates, and then as more
Right.
information gets relayed and they figure out sort of like how exponentially different the situation gets, I don't even know how to articulate what I'm trying to say, but like you realize, no, there are infinite amounts of duplicates out there that are making the most subtle differences in their decisions, and that's impacting so many different things. I thought that was great. Really nice moment to realize like how grand the scale actually is of what they're going through. And I just think it was they relayed in such a just a clever way once they look at like, okay, so there's been 3 sets of glow stick boxes. We open the blue ones. That means there's a set of blue and red and green glow sticks out there. And then they think of like all the other factors that they've been working with and how much that exponentially grows the amount of duplicates out there. Like the math behind this movie, like again, relayed in a way that anybody can understand, but the true understanding of it is just so mind-boggling to think. I love that such a heady sci-fi movie was delivered in such a accessible way. I guess is something that I appreciated about this movie the most.
I wanted to know what you thought about them, like, and maybe it was just to make them more accessible and real people. How they kind of threw in, kind of like little character moments that, like, it seems like Emily and her do, like they're not really. It seems like they're not connecting the way they should be, and then there's that whole moment with the other girl. I think like she like comes on to him. I think they kiss.
The
and so
ex,
that's going. Yeah, that's going on. It's like, did you think that stuff was like necessary, or did that add to the like the idea that like, oh, we're dealing with like real people and we're trying to like make it seem like this is a real situation that real people could be in?
I guess there's certain decisions made at certain times where I thought, okay, like this is definitely, I know that they kind of got to lean into more character moments where they lack in like effects. But I did appreciate by the end of it, like once we realize how many duplicates of these characters there are out there and all the subtle differences in their behavior, that it would make sense that as people are leaving the house and essentially coming back as different versions of themselves, that we would see these nuanced differences in their personality. So I did ultimately chalk up every character interaction after the point where they leave to be explained by that. So I did think that was pretty neat. What else was I gonna say? I love the moment when Amir and Hugh sort of realize that because they were the first two to leave and there's so many different versions of the house where everyone is in, there's no way they came back to the same house, and they sort of just look at each other and they're like, yeah, we got to get out of here as soon as we can, kind of like through the cover of darkness. That was I thought that was a really fun moment. But I wanted to ask you too, what the biggest like oh shit moment, or you very well may have covered it with the note scene, but right before that I was curious, what was the biggest moment that made you go, oh shit, like things have just changed, or this is a big moment?
There was the note thing. I remember when they got the pictures with the numbers on the back. That initially
I was really thinking, what the fuck is going on?
Especially when they were like, oh, like you took this picture here, like this was like, I took this picture of you, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then I also like when they decided to, because they had gotten that box with the picture, so like, all right, now we're gonna do the same thing, but like send it over to them, and they're trying to like have these, like trying to do these things where they're making little differences, so it's not like they're copying what they received, but then like as they're like just having normal discussion about doing it, they realize that like, well, okay, we're kind of doing what they did to us, and like let's change like what. Yeah, I thought that was really cool, and like a nice little like mind game thing too, of like how are they going to keep track of. Like I'm gonna use a different color marker to write on here, and like we're gonna set up different numbers by like rolling a dice, so like we can, it'll be random how we get the numbers on the back of the pictures. I also like watching how those pictures were coming together, though, like how how she had the picture of her and her guy that was like cut in half, and then you kind of see like how that does happen. I also uncomfortably laughed when because that was a really human moment. She's like, I don't really want to cut this picture because it's all these pictures of us together. And the girl was like, oh wait, I think I have a picture of him like by himself and like in the back in my purse. And then she looked at her like, like what?
Well, yeah.
And then she was like, oh yeah, I mean, I just wrote my like checking account information. You can give it to him, just like scratch this out. And then she's like, no, I'll just cut it in half. I thought that was like a cool little like character moment. But it was stuff like that made me go like, it was like the screenplay was so well thought out in that aspect of it.
Right.
To kind of like have these characters do, because that's what you would do. Like, okay, like we know what's going on now. Let's try to do what they did to us, and try to make it different. And I mean, and that's when, like, I guess when Emily kind of realizes, with the numbers, like, how depending on like who left the house, if they would come back different. And I think it was one or two people that hadn't left, and like so they are probably
right. The same
people
versions
who've been there. So I love that you were realizing that as you were realizing it.
Yes,
like everything about the movie, you were learning things as the characters were learning things. And I love that not being ahead of them.
Yes, exactly.
Makes it maybe
more fun ride.
To ask you, maybe we'll see the question to ask you, like, did you think about what was going on? Because I actually didn't really. I was like, I don't know what's happening, or or what's, but I'm intrigued by it. So yeah, what was your shit moment?
Oh, there were several. Virtually everything that happens, I remember like the first time watching it, and like unfortunately, like rewatching it for this episode, like it wasn't that distant of a watch, so I did remember a lot of it, but it was still entertaining to go through again and experience those moments again. But like everything from realizing that, first when they first see the first duplicates of themselves out in the street, to realizing, okay, we're not the only people here, to realizing like that dark patch that they crossed over to go to the other house that has a light on, like is sort of like the portal to a different reality, to realizing how many factors add up to equalizing how many different realities there really are. Like there's so many moments and clues that are dropped that completely change the context of the movie. I'd say there's like 5 or 6 significant additions. So pretty much everyone that presented itself, I was like, oh my God, this is super entertaining. And I remember just being gripped. I could hardly take my eyes off the screen. But one thing I did want to talk about too, maybe before I get your thoughts on the ending, is just something about the production and how they filmed it. I thought it was really neat. I don't know if they did this necessarily for every scene, but the writer and director, the co-writers, I should say, and the director, it kind of had like I mentioned earlier, they had a pretty bare bones, not even a script, but sort of an outline for the characters to follow and their motivations for each scene.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in particular that I remember like reading on IMDb that was the scene when Kevin and Emily are sort of like the main couple, if you could call them that. It's they're all pretty much equally characters until near the end. Yeah. There's a scene where Kevin wants to leave, because everyone wants to leave this house at some point to go check out what's outside, even though it's definitely a dumb idea. But Kevin wants to leave, and Emily is like kind of blocking him from leaving the house and is really adamant that he stay.
Puts her foot down,
Exactly. So like what I had read is that the director had just gave those characters motivation, not a script. And the motivation for Kevin was, you need to leave this house. And Emily's motivation was, you cannot let Kevin leave the house. And so that scene is just them ad-libbing what to say into like trying to convince the other person. And who's going to win that argument? Yeah.
So they each have their own motivations that they were given to by the
that
director,
are conflicting,
and
nothing else. I thought that is such a clever way to film a scene and just see what they're going to say, what they're going to do to sort of meet their goal for what their director has written for them in that scene. I thought that was super neat. Yeah. I just never heard of anything being done like that.
Yeah. To give them 2 different directions. Like, hey, like, the outline's not even the same. Like, you're doing this because you need to go, and you're doing this because you need him to stay. And like, I imagine him almost like telling them separately, and then like, now,
exactly. I don't think they knew, but obviously, like,
which is cool because she's very adamant that, I mean, they both are, but like, she kind of ends it with a firm, like, you're not gonna go.
Exactly. And you can see he's like, okay.
And you totally buy it. Yeah.
I'd just be interested to know what other scenes are filmed that way, and like what people's motivations are in each scene to kind of like spur certain dialogue on. I thought that was a really, I don't know about unique, because maybe this has been done before, not that I'd ever heard of, but really cool way of filming your movie.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And because that could, like, without the right actors, that wouldn't work, because it would, I mean, I guess you're all on the same page that you're like, right, you're in a movie that's improvised, and you're all kind of trying to figure out, like, you haven't outlined what you're going to do, but you're trusting each other to like move the story along based on like what you already know, and then throwing that wrench in there where you're being told two like different things on how to react to a scene would make that interesting. But it definitely pulled out a good moment though, because I mean it was really, I bought it. I mean I really bought like more so her urgency at the end, because like she doesn't win that argument. I mean she
definitely
like she's just kind of like, no, you're not gonna go, and it just gets quiet. And he's kind of like, all right, not gonna go. But that's cool. That's cool to know though.
Well, that was super neat too. So definitely, I know how we kind of were just saying that mostly like all the actors are pretty much all co-leads, but towards when the movie's starting to wrap up, the narrative sort of pushes the character of M to the forefront. She kind of takes over as the lead before the movie wraps up. I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that transpired. Like if you thought it was like, if it took anything out of the movie for you, because like for me, I remember my first watch, it definitely seemed like as one of the weaker points of the movie when it kind of pushed her into the focus. But I did like how like the conflict that it set up for her at the end of the movie. But how did you find getting there once she kind of left the house and was observing all these other realities? Like, what did you think about that whole sequence and where it goes?
Well, I was interesting because like we begin with her, right? I mean, like and so like even though it is ensemble, I kind of did look at her as the lead. I mean,
because
camera,
of how it opens,
and the camera's focused on her a lot. She's in a lot of like, a lot of the we get a lot of her reacting to things more, so it seems like than the other characters do. Even though that a lot of people are on screen just as much, it seems like the camera like is always finding her. So it made sense to me that at a certain point that it would. I wasn't expecting it to break off with her, but I didn't.
Neither was I.
I wasn't too surprised either that it did, because it seemed like we began with her. The camera kept finding her in like a lot of scenes, and a lot of scenes where she is looking concerned a lot. Like she seems to be looking the most concerned out of all of them at certain points. So it seemed like we would be like with her at a crucial moment in the movie. As far as how watching her watch like into the other house and watching like the events transpire with the other group, and they're essentially doing the same things that they were doing at the beginning. Like they're all like vibing and talking, but like it was a combination of like the little subtle like music and her watching it and just being like, I couldn't tell if she was perplexed by it or what she was going through, but it felt like whatever she was feeling, I was feeling it, because it was almost like for her to fully see this and like full light, not in darkness, like no one covered in shadow, like now you're seeing this full on, everyone including yourself sitting down with your guy, like that put it in perspective of how real this was. And I know she knew it was real before that, but having to see it wide open like that for her, and then for us to see it that way, made that situation all the more real for me, and I guess for her.
I did like that. So for the majority of the movie, she's conflicted about if she's going to leave and follow Kevin to, I think, is it Vietnam that he's going to for like 4 months. And that's kind of like the crux in their relationship, is he wants her to go and she's running out of time to make a decision. So I feel like what I liked about her leaving the house and observing all the other realities by going through that like dark portal is like she seems to be like she's made up her decision, but she can't apply it to the position that she's in. So she's sort of like shopping around for that reality where her and Kevin seem to be like on the same page with each other. Yeah, and I thought that was pretty. And obviously, though, by entering that reality and there's already a copy of her there, the conflict of that presents, I thought was really intriguing. That is my problem with it, though, is that where I felt like this like highbrow level sci-fi concept did kind of come down to a more, I guess, conventional conflict, where it's like, I don't know, it just felt more something like not in the sense of like the quality of the movie diminished, but just like now the big conflict is now something more that we've probably like seen before. And so that did kind of like, not in a bad way, but it did. I thought the movie was at its best when it was them figuring out what was going on in the context of like their reality. So once we were now in a definitive one and she wasn't leaving anymore and she wanted to get rid of her copy to be with Kevin and like take its place, then I was like, okay, this is a very different conflict that we're dealing with now. And I liked the other part more, but I still enjoyed it.
pretty dark though.
It is
I mean,
pretty
like,
dark. Yeah.
that she had, like, she got to that point. I mean, like, because I didn't forget about that plot element, but that isn't important. That she is dealing with that whole like, I don't know if I want to go, and that's what he's like talking about too. Like, she's unsure if she wants to leave, and yeah, and who knows, man? Like, her duplicate probably made a decision to go with him. I don't know if they're going through the same stuff.
Right.
So like that could very well be the case. So I get what you're saying, because it does become more of like a more human basic level, like conventional,
Right.
like, I got to get rid of my, that copy to
This person in the way. Yeah.
way to being with my guy. But there is a darker element to that. I mean, and then what she does to kind of get seemingly get rid. I mean, it's I love that it's like, because there's the limitations of the budget, you can't really do much action wise, right? But what she does do to dispatch her is I was pretty like, whoa, like thrown a bit.
I remember thinking like she had no hesitation in taking herself out. Like she just goes right to town, and like even then when it wakes up later, she just like keeps going. Like I just thought that was hilarious. And she has no remorse for her own self.
Yeah, and I guess one thing, I mean, maybe you can point it out, because she does have a moment where she's watching all this stuff happen in the house that she's in, and it seems like there's all this conflict and turmoil, and then that's when she kind of like sneaks out. I mean, I guess we're just supposed to read that that's the moment that she's like, I'm going to do this. I guess you don't really need another like real moment to be like where she decides that's what she's going to do.
Right.
But that is a big thing for her to decide to do, and I was like, that was the only thing I kind of questioned. Like, oh, I wonder why she decided in that particular moment. Maybe because everything was just falling apart.
That's how I interpret it. Like things are getting way too out of control. People are now like beating on each other.
Yeah.
Where this is going to devolve, and she's like, I need to get out of here. I feel like she gets out because of like the stress of the conflict before she even realizes, oh, now's the opportunity for me to like shop for the perfect reality.
Yeah. And honestly, that is a really cool dark element of that story. Like, hey, like my reality is like tearing itself apart, and I'm gonna find one that's a bit happier. But in order to do that, she has to get rid of that other version of herself. And the fact that, and it's crazy because she doesn't seem like someone that we've been introduced to that would go to a place like that. Like she, I mean, you don't get that out of her at all. I guess in like a movie that was like a little longer, you would like get a more indication of like when that flip happens. But maybe, I mean, in a heightened situation like that, where you're just like, and really, I mean, she does leave when it's just chaos in that house, where it's like, you slept with blah blah blah, and then I can't believe you didn't tell me, and then there's fight there. People are throwing like fisticuffs and like and it's so much going on that they don't even pay attention to the fact that she leaves.
That's right.
So like I guess that you don't really need much more motivation other than like, I've seen all this stuff happen, like people leaving, coming back, and they're different. There's all these little subtle changes in people's personalities, and now the changes are so drastic, and everyone's pulling each other apart. I'm gonna find something better, and I'm glad that they give her a moment to like slowly back out and watch it. Like she doesn't just like leave. It's like it's a slow like this is not for me anymore, and I gotta go. But the implications of her doing that to her other self is kind of crazy. I do get what you're saying, that it really does lower it down to a more human need to, take someone else's place rather than have like the whole like deeper questions about the sci-fi element go on.
Right.
But maybe it's cool. Like you have movies where you do a little bit with that, and you do a little bit with like human nature too.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
Because it seems like they're discussing basic human nature in the movie too, like how people react to situations, and that's a part of the story as well. So,
totally.
I dug it. I liked the ending. I liked how it ended, like the actual like what it ended on.
Right.
I didn't really need more than that, and I can see a whole audience getting extra mad that is how it like ends. But
I didn't know how I felt exactly the first time about the ending. But I would have trouble imagining where else it could go either. Yeah. So I'm not sure how else I would have written it. So
it's like, oh, look at it, you're calling me. Like, oh,
yeah, yeah. And then it kind of ends on that. And I'd like that we don't necessarily see how that gets resolved. I like that it's left for us to imagine what's going to happen next.
Yeah,
I like that a lot of the time. So
I liked it. I mean, I enjoyed all aspects of it. I thought it was really. I can't believe I hadn't heard of it. That was I mean, I don't need to hear about everything, but it never even like crossed my path ever. And
well, have you ever heard of the movie Primer?
No. Should I see that too?
It's another, and I think it has an even smaller budget. That's another really low budget, like off the wall sci-fi movie we got to check out someday, because this movie gave me a lot of vibes to that. It's kind of goes down a different path, but anyway, we'll bookmark that for another time, because that's I was hoping that maybe you'd heard of that, because like these are cut from the same cloth in a sense, but I'm pretty sure Primer was only made for like $7,000, which is even more impressive. But we'll have a conversation about that someday. But
and the girl that played Lee actually did not know this. She's a writer and director. She directed. I mean, the main one is Hustlers. She directed Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez and Constance Wu.
Made a lot of money.
She also wrote Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlists, which I did not know as well. I recognize her face now, having seen what she looks like. But I did not know that that was her, because she, of course, is 2013 and she, younger and everything. But yeah, she's been nominated for a Directors Guild of America Award for outstanding directing for a drama series. She directed several episodes of Succession as well.
Wait,
what?
what?
Yeah, she has. Yeah, so I was like, whoa, good for you.
Okay, super neat.
Yeah, and then of course, Nicholas Brennan from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That was a surprise. I was like, I wonder if that's why he gave the movie to watch. Did he even realize that was the guy from Buffy?
No, did not. I found that out afterwards. I was like, oh, okay, this will be a cool connection to this movie for Gaius, but I did not know.
But the rest of these people, not really all that familiar with. Like the guy, Maurice Sterling played Kevin. I guess he was in Smoking Aces. I've seen that, but I don't remember who he played in it. He was on Homeland as well, the TV series Claire Danes. And he's also in Beverly Hills Chihuahua. So there's that. But yeah, I had not heard of like most of these people, which made it better. I'm glad they weren't like
it did make it feel more grounded, right?
Yeah, like they're not like marquee actors that we would know. I think that kind of helps.
Absolutely.
What they were selling. But yeah, I was left with a nice feeling after it was over. I love that it was like short and to the point, and I think it got its point across really well. I was really surprised by what they were able to do with like not a lot. I'm always impressed by
that. I know, that's what I ultimately left that experience with, is like I just felt it was so impressive and so inspiring that somebody could, with such a small budget, essentially probably like mostly like their friends and in his own house, make such a cerebral, well-made, well-regarded movie with virtually nothing. It just makes you think like anybody can do this. Not anybody, but there's not as many limitations as you would think there would be to make a quality movie. And sometimes it's just nice to see an example of that. But now that you've seen it twice, do you think you could give it a rating for us? Because I gotta know. I know.
Score?
Yeah.
I went 4.5.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
it was
awesome.
Like, I went 4.5. It did what it needed to do. I love that. Like, I like cerebral sci-fi movies. Most people don't, because they either get too talky or
they can be alienating, right? If they're
But the good thing about this one is like it has a sci-fi element, but it also has like a human element to it too, where you're just getting to know like people, and they're in a setting that you can find yourself in. So I think that helps. We're not like on a space station somewhere or anything like that. It's like it helps that like it's a normal like setting.
There's almost nothing visually in this movie that would lend you to believe, if you were to watch this with no subtitles and no audio, you'd think this is not a sci-fi movie at all. But which is like that's the antithesis of the typical sci-fi movie, which really relies on visuals. So I find that as a great juxtaposition.
Yeah.
I
also love the score. I thought the score was really good too. I didn't give it a lot of credit when we were talking, but for something that for a movie that was so small, the score felt like not big or huge, but like a lot more grander than something like this, like small and subdued would have. So I really
100%. You're right. I noticed it more in my second watch too, but the score was pretty effective. But I'm really relieved that you liked it this much. I'm like, I kind of thought that you would enjoy it, but I know that like you said, that review said you'll either love this or hate this.
I can see why someone, if they were going into it, thinking it was going to be, I mean, if you just read the plot synopsis, thinking it was going to be something bigger and grander,
right?
And then
you might be disappointed.
So many people don't like when movies leave you with open-ended, questions and all that too. Like we don't know definitively what happens in the end. Like we all use our imaginations, and I like that, but I can see it angering, like, especially if it's like overhyped by other people. Like, yo, you should watch this, and then they see it, they're like, man, that was whack. But I don't feel that way. I'm very open minded with movies like this.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it.
And I'm glad you did. That's great. It's an awesome score. So, well, that's Coherence. Glad that you were able to see this and that you enjoyed it. I'm already like, it's sad. I know I got to put some time in between this rewatch, but like I do really love this movie. I showed Cam, and I'm excited to show somebody else maybe someday. But glad that we had the chance to talk about it, that you've seen it. And I don't think we've really teased at all what you had me watch. But now the floor is yours to tee up my watch.
I had you watch something entirely different. Well, it was like hard to figure out, like, all right, what kind of movies. Someone told me I should have used this opportunity to get you to watch 25th Hour, but I was like,
I thought that you might have done that. It crossed my mind a few times.
But the movie you gave me was like, like sci-fi-ish, not psychological, So yeah. I didn't want to like go too far off the beaten path, but I thought about it. But I didn't ultimately. I ultimately gave you the 2000 science fiction psychological thriller, The Cell, starring Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn, and Vincent D'Onofrio. You had never seen it.
That's right. And this must have come up at some point because you knew that I hadn't seen it, but I don't ever remember talking about it.
I think it's so I believe because it came out in 1999. 2000. It came out in 2000. I think I brought it up at one point when I probably won't be covered Out of Sight because I was naming movies that Jennifer Lopez was decent in. And
yes,
and this was right. and this is one of them that I was like, oh, she did Selena, Out of Sight, and The Cell, and those were all pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then how I kind of came, I was like, I remember we were trying to figure out how we're gonna do this. I just kind of turned around and it was actually just right there on my shelf. And I zeroed in on it. I was like, we're gonna go with The Cell. And I went with it only because it's not just like a serial killer thriller, but it kind of puts a interesting spin on that.
Doesn't ever.
So
pretty
it's
original concept for the time too.
Yeah, so not just like a typical police procedural, like we're trying to find a killer. They're trying to find the killer's victim, and the killer is already in a coma, and so he can't provide information on how to find his latest victim. But we have Jennifer Lopez's character, who's like a child psychologist, and she's come up with this like experimental virtual reality treatment for coma patients where she can go inside their minds and pull out any information that she needs to pull out. Or when we meet her, she kind of has this kid who's in the coma, and the parents don't really think that her treatment and stuff is working, and we kind of find out little things about her and her past, like a little bit throughout the movie.
Right.
But there's this whole thing in that this kind of science isn't foolproof. It's not really up to snuff. But there is also this serial killer who kidnaps women and puts them in these tanks and has like this. What's that system? Basically, what would you call that has all the water like kind of shooting into?
I looked at it like a fishbowl almost that like would slowly fill up.
Yeah. So it's like on a timer. It doesn't fill up all at once. It's like on like a timer where but eventually they slowly drown, and then he has other things that he does while that's going on too.
Terrifying.
Terrifying
to be in, honestly.
Yeah.
Just the dread that induced watching the videotape of that one victim going through that was like, this is horrific.
Yeah. So, but he is clearly, he's been taking medication. He's going through his own stuff too, where like he's having all these like what would you call like attacks where like perhaps he has a tumor. It's like something's going on with with him neurologically or whatever, and he falls to a coma, and he falls into said coma without them finding the latest girl that he's kidnapped and put into one of those tanks. And so they go to Jennifer Lopez's character, Catherine, and her company to go inside his mind so they can find where this girl is. And it's just from there, it's just a trippy kind of mixes a little bit of sci-fi with a little bit of psychological thriller with a little bit of
some horror too.
And
honestly,
some horror too.
Visuals.
The imagery is like out of control. And some of the imagery very 2000s of when it came out. Like it came out in 2000. But also it seems like a lot of it was like maybe ahead of its time in a way. Like you didn't really see like for its time, it was doing a lot. I think that other movies like this weren't really doing. But yeah, it was the first time you saw it. So what did you think about it when you checked it out?
I thought it was really intriguing. It was it's always interesting, like with like me watching something for the first time, like from the 2000s, and I had no idea that this movie had influence. It to me, it's so clearly now. Do you know what I'm gonna say?
With what? Oh,
It's
maybe.
Inception. Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've
It does have
never
that. Yeah,
heard
yeah,
Inception anybody ever credit The Cell for
yeah.
what Inception did. Like those movies are like I watched a video actually that compared it, and there was like 24 significant plot details that Inception and the Cell share. I'm like, this has undeniably influenced one of the greatest sci-fi movies of the 2010s. Like, why is nobody saying this? Or maybe they have it. I just never knew what The Cell was, and I one-offed it and didn't never consider it. But like, I don't know. Do you feel like that The Cell gets like adequate reception or credit rather for like what it
Not,
did?
not
Not even just for
really.
Inception, but for like maybe like just sci-fi thrillers. Like I thought it
I
was
don't.
ahead
I
of its
don't
time for
think
sure.
it does totally. I think that like it did well when it came out. It made money. It was like it made $104 million
Right.
worldwide on a $33 million budget. It didn't flop
Love
by
that
any means.
mid-budget. No.
Yeah, but I think that it kind of gets lost. There were a lot of serial killer movies that came out during that time, and
Yes, but
even
this
though
one's
it
so radically different.
yeah, different, yeah, and even though it has that element of like the whole like going into one's mind and like all the visuals and all that, I also think it gets lost in the shuffle because no one wants to give Jennifer Lopez's movies a lot of credit, even when they're good. And
Right.
Early in her career, she had some good stuff come out, and this is one of them. And this was, I think she had just like started her music career around the time that this came out, like maybe a year before. So she was still turning out good stuff, like almost in a row that she had some pretty good movies come out. But I think that she is kind of labeled now because of who she is. She's more of a celebrity than an actress. She's more of an entertainer than an actress.
Yes.
So like her movies don't get a lot of credit. I remember when we covered Out of Sight, I don't really think that you had heard a lot about it or a ton about it.
Nope,
or
not really anything at all.
And that's Steven Soderbergh with a pretty good cast outside of her too. Like
yep.
And a lot of people that like her will point out like, hey, she was pretty good in those movies. I think a lot of it has to do with that. But it does have a bit of a cult following now. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, I know it's coming out on 4K soon.
Nice.
Which,
that would be
which means it will be a very good
4K.
Because I had to watch my DVD, which doesn't look as good as it could look.
I watched it on Amazon, I think. So I'm not sure how they have it crafted there, but
visually, it's just amazing, and like what they were able to do. I mean, you could tell they talk about on like the DVD extras, like what artwork and all the stuff they were inspired by to create some of the imagery and stuff. But I don't think it gets enough credit for what it was doing back then. And pick your poison. It could be like there was so many but like I said, it's a different kind of serial killer movie.
Yeah.
I mostly blame the Jennifer Lopez effect because even critics didn't love this when it came out. It has a
it's funny you say that because I was gonna follow that up with apparently Roger Ebert really loved this movie. He said it was one of his top 10s of the year 2000, which I thought was
he gave it 4 stars out of 4.
He is so inconsistent. The more we talk about him and his ratings, I'm like, what was his taste? I don't know. Like he has great taste in movies, obviously, but what did we just talk about? Where The Hitcher. He didn't like because of its gratuitous violence. I'm like, there was a lot of horrific imagery in The Cell, and he loved it.
Yeah,
but I guess times change.
For all of his visual pyrotechnics, it's also a story where we care about the characters. There's a lot at stake at the end, and we're involved. I know people who hate it, find it pretentious, or unrestrained. I think it's one of the best films of the year. And you're right, he put it on the best 10 movies of 2000. He said the director is a visual virtuoso who juggles his storylines effortlessly. It's dazzling the way he blends so many notes, styles, and genres into a film so original. So yeah, he liked it a lot. But the critics who did like it called it contrived and convoluted, and which I don't think it really is.
I don't find it convoluted, but maybe that's because maybe for the time, like I just we've wrapped our heads around a lot of complex movies before. I didn't find this one was particularly hard to follow. Perhaps maybe the concept was novel at the time, but one thing that I did hear in some of those criticisms that I agreed with, and it wasn't really until afterwards when I was listening maybe to some other people review the movie in anticipation for this episode. I only watched it a couple nights ago, but I just wanted to have it fresh in my mind for when we were talking about it. And only in the context of some of the visuals did I find it a little bit pretentious, where I felt like there was a lot of great visuals in it. You could tell that we were watching like artwork on the screen, and a point about that later I'll get to, but there were some scenes exclusively all in the character, like Vincent D'Onofrio's character's mind. I think it's Carl, right? Carl Starger, which I thought was absolutely wonderful, like sets that they were able to make while portraying his mind. I thought was great. But like, for instance, like, and I was interested in bringing these up because I know that you've seen this, I would imagine, a few times now. Right. So I wanted to see if you had a different opinion, if you could lend any insight to some of these things. But like, a scene that's probably one of the more memorable parts of it that I think anybody that's seen this movie even once will remember, but I couldn't for the life of me grasp what the point of it was in the movie, is the scene where the horse is split into like a bunch of slivers and then spread out. I was like, that is a great visual, really cool moment in the movie, but what is the significance of it? And that had me thinking like, okay, yeah, that looks great, but was there any substance behind it? And it didn't like take me out of the movie. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I just thought this could be where I would support that maybe it was a little bit pretentious. And I know it was a music video director's debut, right? Tarsem Singh, is that?
Yeah.
Right.
He hasn't really done
he did Immortals, which I love that movie. I've seen that movie 100 times when I was growing up, and I never in a million years would have thought he was related to this. So that's pretty cool.
I get the impression that stuff might be pretentious. I mean, like it does say that scene in particular is based on the work of a British artist named Damien Hirst. That's where they pulled it from.
Right. Who I recognize that name from stuff before.
And it seems like some of the stuff visually is just like, I wonder if they're just thinking like, hey, a serial killer would have just fucked up shit like this in his head without
I buy that.
Without having much meaning behind it. So I guess I understand that point.
Okay. I didn't look at it that way, but that makes sense.
But like the visuals of him like appearing to be more like, which I think she makes a comment where like he feels like a king in his own castle, kind of, where and like and there are moments where like where he's a little boy, and then the more like monstrous part of him is someone that is basically looks like he's watching over like his throne, like a monster, like basically. So there are visuals that make sense, and then I think there's just those that just seem like they were thrown. Like I know there's one that has like that is kind of based on like the Losing My Religion REM video, where there's like the TV and stuff like whatever small version of, I forgot the exact visual, but they took it from that.
I know exactly what you're talking about. When he's like cleaning his first victim in the tub, right?
The tub, yeah. So the way they shot that just like the Losing My Religion video.
Which he shot that video for them, right? That music video.
Yeah. And they also took stuff from
Love that song.
They took stuff from Mark Romanek, who was also a music video director. So they use a lot of Closer from Nine Inch Nails, The Perfect Drug by Nine Inch Nails, Bedtime Story by Madonna. So there's a lot of music video influence, which is kind of, I mean, music video directors get a lot of shit when they do films, because you can tell when they are doing films, because it's a lot of quick cuts and a lot of like really, messed up imagery.
Techniques that they were used to doing. Yeah.
It made sense, but the reason I liked the whole thing with the horse, because like when I first saw the movie, I wasn't expecting that at all.
I was like, that is a really impressive visual to see.
I want to ask you a real question, just for what were your thoughts when she first went into his, like, as far as like what you were seeing, like when she first went inside of his head? Were you expecting visuals like that?
No, I didn't really know what to expect, because I wasn't really under the impression that when the movie opens and she's in like this desert landscape, I didn't really understand that like she was in that kid's mind trying to communicate with him, and like that was all his imagination, and she was sort of placed in there as like a what would you call it, like an avatar in a sense. And so when we're going into the serial killer's mind, I didn't really know what to expect, but I quickly was on board once I realized like every room she's going to walk into is going to be this hellish landscape inspired by all this super nuanced, like ancient or medieval or Renaissance period art. And I really, really like that. Like, I love like conventional art. I don't take the time to, wander museums very often, but I love love that sort of stuff. And it really made me think of Silent Hill for some reason, like just like all the time spent in Carl's head. I was like, this feels like what Silent Hill feels like. I chalked it up between like a mix of Silence of the Lambs, Inception, and Silent Hill. If they had a love child, that's what this movie feels like. And those are all great properties. So I was super on board, but no, definitely did not expect that. I did quickly realize though, like we're never going to know what's around the next corner, and it's all going to be very spooky and hellish and depraved. And that is, as we know, I love that sort of shit. So I was very, very on board with it. But yeah, I would say like that, all those scenes, I think are strong evidence of this, like essentially being a horror movie when we're in that part. Like I really thought the visuals were quite just awe-inducing and scary and made you feel dirty, and a great representation of what it might be like to be in a truly insane person's head. And I'd never really seen that before.
I actually like too that they also, that the story suggests that there is an innocence still there, that he didn't grow, like he didn't start that way, which is why having him as a little boy. The scene that got me the most, even though it's not the most like visually arresting scene, is when the plate gets broken and she kind of gets pushed into the closet, and then like I guess the dad comes out and is about to beat him about breaking the plate, and then she's like screaming in there like, I broke the plate, and you're hearing him get like beaten and then called a lot of like awful names while he's doing it. And then that stuff too was also I like that they were, because her and Vince Vaughn have that talk too where he's telling her about like why he I guess stopped being a lawyer or whatever, and insinuated that someone had gotten off because they said he was insane, and because he had all this like fucked up things happen to him when he was younger, and then that he knows a lot of people that's happened to, and they don't go off and do crazy things like that. And she kind of, you could tell that she felt differently, that those kind of events could shape you and make you different. I know that's a much larger discussion because like they only have that one scene to really talk about
and
those
it is a very poignant scene. You're right.
But I thought it was cool that they presented those two sides of it, that because of what she does for a living, because of the things that she's gone through, that she's like, everyone isn't born bad, and there's a reason that it's
the nature versus nurture debate,
right. And I'm glad you only get one scene of that, but I think it was enough to kind of convey the why she does what she does, and why where he's
Vince
at
does what he does.
Yeah.
That scene too that you just mentioned about like her peering through the closet. Have you seen Blue Velvet?
Yes, I have seen that.
Right out of there. That's exactly where I got brought back to. I'm like, that is the scene when Kyle, why am I forgetting his last name?
Last name too right now.
I know. David Lynch regular anyway.
Yeah.
It's the scene where his character is like viewing Isabella Rossellini get assaulted by
McLaughlin, sorry.
Kyle MacLachlan, yes. It is literally, I was like, oh, that is such a that's right from Blue Velvet. That is awesome. And again, another scene that is almost replicated in Inception, like when who is it? When the character's going through the elevator and watching Leo and his wife argue. I was like, that is right from there, and that was right from there. It's just super cool to see that movie as an in-between that was influenced and did influencing. Really cool insight into the killer's motivation too, which I like that they did their best to make Vincent D'Onofrio sympathetic. Like when he's like king of the castle and like ruling the roost in his own brain and is tormenting those characters, you're like, this is absolutely horrific. And when you even see him interact with like his last victim before he dumps her, I was like, okay, this is a really awesome scene about like just what a depraved killer does with their prey. But then those scenes that make you think like this is why he is the way he is, and it's hard to feel anything but sympathy for why, if given a different path, he likely wouldn't have become who he was. So, really well written at least.
And that was hard too, because you see him. I mean, we don't get a lot of him in action as a serial killer. We see one specific thing that he does, and
and I think it's enough.
And it's enough, but like you have to. I think that's based in the writing and in the acting too, to like, because you need to sympathize with him on some level once she goes inside and like needs to find an innocent part of him to communicate with. But I mean, that had to be rough, like writing it, because I mean it's pretty depraved at the start, and I mean that whole scene where he's suspended.
Oh man, that was so
And apparently that scene is longer, and because I only have the Blu-ray, I only have the DVD, I don't have the Blu-ray, but I guess it's unrated there, and the scene runs much longer, and you don't. We already know what he's doing, but I guess they make it clear of what he's doing.
Oh boy,
and on there, and I was like,
I thought it was clear enough.
I thought it was clear enough too. And I also love. I think they said Vincent D'Onofrio's wife for like 2 weeks after she saw the movie did not like.
Let him sleep in her bed.
Yeah. But yeah, he was good though. Like, and I love that it also doesn't happen right away. Like the first time she goes in there, like she is frightened by what she sees when she sees him come down with like I think it's like the giant like cape, and he like yells at her and like where'd you come from? And then she like screams and is like, oh, let me get out of here, and like can't do it. And then I'm glad after that conversation she has with Vince Vaughn that she's like, okay, I want to help. Then let me see what I can do. I think I can connect with him, and then she starts to connect with not just the little boy in him, but also a part of his like adult psyche that isn't all gone too.
Right.
Until she starts asking like where's Julia? And he's like no names and like But yeah, I thought the writing was like surprisingly good. I don't really understand why critics didn't like it that much. I was surprised based on like how many people I know that really like it, because I know a lot of people that enjoy it and are surprised when they see it that it didn't get better reviews when it came out. And because it is so different, but I did read in some of the reviews, they do point out that they think it's just like an excuse to show off like S&M imagery and like and then like a lot of critics called the movie misogynistic in its depiction of women inside of his head and what he does to women. But I mean, it's about a serial killer. Right? It's about a serial killer, so I
feel that's an unfair judgment if you ask me. But
yeah, so I don't really know. But I was surprised. I thought more critics at least liked it. I feel like it'd be one of those things like down, like I know because came out in 2000, so maybe we're too late for a revisionist history. But like, it seems like it deserves a little bit of a reappraisal from some of them. Like now, like I wonder if they watched it now, if they would feel the same way about it. Especially pointing out what you're pointing out. Like I mean, because like the whole Inception thing is a pretty good thing to point out. And
yeah, it's hard to argue that Inception didn't borrow from this movie.
Yeah.
I will say too, because just for the sake of conversation, I wanted to jump back to one thing, like an element of this movie. And again, I only watched it the one time, so I don't have like, the sharpest memory about it. If there's anything I'm wrong about, feel free to chime in. But I did find, although I didn't not like Jennifer Lopez, I did feel like we didn't have a lot of her character in here to like truly understand. We know that she's working on this technology, working with Edward, the boy that's comatose. That she's trying to. I really don't even have a sense of what she's trying to do with him or what the conflict is with the boy that she's working with. Maybe this is explained, and I just kind of missed it as I was taking everything in. But her and Vince Vaughn, that scene that you mentioned where he's explaining to her about why he left, the other side of the bench to become a FBI agent. That's really the only motivation that we get for why he does what he does. The only real, I feel like meaty part of the character that we get of him is in that scene. The character that's most fleshed out is Vincent D'Onofrio's, which makes sense. Just we're spending a lot of movie in his mind. And I feel like because of that, like when I left this movie, I was like, Vincent D'Onofrio for me stole the show. He was the character that I thought did the best, the actor that I thought did the best. I like Vince Vaughn and I like him in dramatic roles. But I feel like at this point in his career, I wasn't completely sold on his dramatic acting. I think he had some sharpening of his skills to do. Not a bad performance by any means, but like
I was actually going to ask you that because like he's not known a lot. I mean, I think around this time he was doing more dramatic stuff because he
had done Psycho remake.
He did Psycho.
And I had that in my head. Yeah.
And I think he did a movie called Return to Paradise with Anne Heche, and
I'd never even heard of that one.
I did a movie called Domestic Disturbance with John Travolta. That was serious. But I always kind of forget that he had a moment where he's like, I wanted to be a dramatic actor. Maybe because he just didn't want to get stuck doing one thing.
I think that was, he's trying to switch up, not being typecast as just the comedy guy. And I appreciate that I think he's made a lot of progress since then. But at this point, I'm like, I could see somebody else doing this role better. He just doesn't it's not that I don't find he's a leading man. I don't know if I buy him completely as law enforcement. You know what I mean? Like I might feel different.
we see him so much jokey in other movies.
Exactly.
That, it's hard for me to be like this is the guy from Wedding Crashers. So it's like, oh, like it's not that he was bad. He was good. Like he
100%.
does such a job.
But I'm like
it's kind of
there's a
hard
scene where he's like shaving and brushing his teeth in the office at work as if he slept there. Like, I don't think we were given any context as to like what his
life is like.
Life was like. Why is he so invested? Like, why is he, is he kicked out of the house from his wife? Does he even have a wife? Like, is there home turmoil that's going on? Is there anything that like is there a connection between him and the killer that makes him so invested in this case? Like, I didn't feel like we got enough of that. Yeah. So that is like a small criticism. Again, it didn't take me out of the movie by any means. It was just something that I think was missing a little bit. Yeah. But what I most appreciated in this movie was visuals, was the score, was Vincent D'Onofrio. Just I think is like an art lover's dream of a movie. That scene too. One thing I did want to mention just while I'm praising like the visuals, the scene, I think it's one of the first scenes where J-Lo gets into Carl's brain. I can't remember if it's when she's first in it or when she goes back into it. But that big staircase where she sees like the innocent, like youthful version of Carl.
Oh yeah.
The scene right before the horse when he's he's on the other side of this big chasm running up the stairs. I guess that stairwell, that big stone stairwell set, was inspired by a painting of H.R. Geiger's. Yeah, like the guy that in Alien. So I was like, that's super cool to see some of his artwork depicted in this movie. I've never really seen his influence in any movies before other than like the Alien series. So I love that guy. I love what he did as an artist. So to see that utilized, and there's no doubt like hundreds of shots in this movie that are from really well-established artists. And I'd like to even just rewatch it for that alone or deep dive a little bit more. But that I thought was a really cool tidbit. I read that it was based on his painting. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. I wanted to actually ask you or piggyback on what you said about Jennifer Lopez. I think that actually is true, that for someone that we meet in the beginning, who clearly is developing this, like whether it's technology, therapy, whatever it is, it seems like we should be in the movie more with her character.
Yeah. And we're really not.
And we only get surface level stuff like he, when Vince Vaughn, actually that torture scene with Vince Vaughn, once he goes inside of his brain, it's pretty legit. And like it was, and not only is it gory and gross, but like Vincent D'Onofrio just like clapping his hands and like being
and
all, like joyous about it.
Mocking him was great.
Mocking him. But that's when Vince Vaughn drops that whole thing about like her brother and like like the coma thing, and like it's all surface level stuff that we learn about her, but like not in like I feel like, I mean, I guess it's maybe the movie wasn't supposed to have like a lead, but like it seems like since she's the one that has the desire to like make this stuff and make this thing work, probably because of what happened with her brother and everything like that, like we would like be involved with her more in the story. And we have the stuff with her at the beginning with Edward, and like her being in his mind at the beginning, her having conflict with his parents. And then there's like a gap where we don't see her for a while because we're dealing with the whole like serial killer stuff, and then him falling into the coma, FBI side. And then once we get back to her, it's just her going back and forth inside her head, his head. And again, it's all surface level stuff that we get. I mean, I guess we're supposed to understand that she's dealing with Edward because of the stuff with her brother, and she really wants to help once she knows that there is a little kid inside of like that. There's an innocence inside of Carl that she can maybe tap into. That's why she wants to help. But
and the opening really helps make that connection. I thought that was good to open the movie, even though I didn't like really understand the significance of that scene. It does help with how it ties into like the innocent side of the serial killer later. So I thought that was good, but I still couldn't tell you what the issue with the kid from the beginning is. But that
I couldn't really either. Oversight. Like, I mean, he was in the coma, and I guess like it seemed like what she was like. I don't know if he had like an imaginary friend or something in there that was like keeping him like suppressed, I guess, like keeping his mind suppressed. I guess.
See, I missed that. Like, if that's because I get that what they're trying to extract from the serial killer, they want to find out where he's hid his latest victim. I didn't get what she's trying to get out of the kid by being in his head, but I could have missed that part. And if that's the case, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And also the costumes. I guess the person who did the costumes also worked on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and you can kind of see that in the red suits that they wear when they
are muscly like tendon suits. That's exactly
so like
what I thought of.
so it's like very reminiscent of the armor that you see in some of the scenes in Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, it's a visual treat. I mean, the costumes are great. Like, I guess Jennifer Lopez, I guess because this was her, hard to believe it was her 12th movie because she had done a lot of little things before this.
Oh wow!
Before she became big, and she asked the costume designer like she wanted to be comfortable, and the costume designer is like, yeah, you wouldn't be comfortable. Like you're not Jennifer Lopez, so like you would not be comfortable in these outfits. So like that's not the point. And she understood that once that was explained to her. But there's some really cool like costume stuff, like that last kind of outfit that she's in with the mask and like where she's like this like dark priestess of his mind now because like he's taken over her for a second, I guess.
Right.
She can't get out. I also think her strongest moment, even though it's not with words, other than that scene with Vince Vaughn, is when he is reminding her about the stuff with her brother, and it's just a shot of her, and she just starts to cry, and you can tell it's like breaking.
His hold on her.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I'm a little indifferent, even though I like the movie. I'm a little indifferent of the final. I don't want to say, I guess, battle. I guess it is.
No, I know what you mean for sure.
And I kind of thought like when you saw it, he's gonna be like, "Oh, this is cheesy." But I will get your thoughts on it first before I guess share mine.
Yeah, I might have like envisioned a different sort of final showdown. What I did like about it is that innocent Carl Starter is also there in youth form, and that he's also dying. She's like killing the innocence of him by killing, the depraved serial killer side of him. So I thought like the fact that she's also got to kind of reconcile with the fact that she knows there's good and innocence in him that was corrupted, and that it's still, in order to defeat him, it has to die too. I thought that was a pretty cool juxtaposition.
Yeah.
So that added some poignancy to that scene. But overall, I did find it a little bit on the 2000 cheese side. It did remind me of, and I've never seen it, but Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of like the visual style of it. So I thought that was a cool nod, but like it felt a little bit removed from like how the rest of the movie was filmed. So
yeah.
But
it was like the opening part of that where I guess she's like, I don't know, like a nun or whatever, where she's talking to him and all white and like all that stuff is happening around the screen. Was the only like all the other visuals.
Yeah, that was so strange.
Great. Yeah, all the other visuals look so great, and that looked like something I could have done on my computer at that time and not well.
Yeah,
so like tough. That. And then when she has to put on like I guess her like little pseudo armor and like I just hate lines like like my world, my rules, and I think she does say something like that.
Yeah, that was tough. Yeah, it's one of the taglines of the movie too. Which is
but I did like and I thought it was interesting too that when Vince Vaughn takes her out of we got to go. We got the information. We know where she is. We need to leave. And she's like, I'm gonna come back for you. I'm gonna come back for you. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, how are they gonna resolve that? Because she can't save him. Like this person like isn't like, even though that little boy at one point was innocent, this is now a man who isn't. So I did wonder how they were going to resolve that, and I actually thought that what they did was good enough for I'm glad they didn't do anything cheesy by her trying to like pull him out and like where she would exist in like her mind somehow, like something really cheesy like that.
Right.
They both had to die, which is like
yes.
I mean like
and I thought they stuck to that.
Yeah, I thought that was a good way to end things. And I also like and also too, because I talked about this with Mark in another movie yesterday. I also like that they didn't force some like romantic subplot between Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Lopez, because they could have done that.
True, I didn't consider that. Well, they did. They shared one kiss, but which felt forced, but it didn't make me think that there was a romantic angle. I still don't really understand the significance of it. That's another thing I meant to mention. But you're right, they really could have, and it would have felt like appropriate for the time. Like that just would have felt like a totally 2000s thing to do. And you're right. I appreciate that they did not.
Yeah, because movies like that all the time, like because they're in this like intense situation that they would like suddenly be romantically involved, even though like the movie goes or what in the course of like it's just a day. Where they're trying to find where they're trying to find
30 hours or something. Yeah.
Also I thought it was funny that when I found out the girl that they hired to play the second actress in the tank, she lied and said that she knew how to swim really well,
right?
And she could not swim well, so I guess
she couldn't go under without holding her nose.
And they said those scenes were very difficult to film, and they said they would have switched her out with the first actress that they had in the tank for a little bit if they had known that. And I thought that was funny.
That is funny. I did remember she lied about being a lifeguard or something too.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's little things too. I love how they use his dog in the movie. Like that's like they, when they had to find one thing that he cared about to bring into the room to like kind of like soften
Right.
like the stuff in his brain. Also thought it was crazy how he used his dog to like lure in victims, like because like she clearly did hit the dog, like
Right.
yeah, right. And I thought that was like pretty interesting, and unique. I don't know, and I can ask you this where I rank it yet as far as like there are a lot of really good serial killer movies.
Oh boy.
This I don't think this would ever be named in the same breath as like Seven or Silence of the Lambs, but I do think visually it for what it does, and like I don't think any other movie has done that whole like let's go inside the mind of a killer and like
I agree with you on that for sure. It
and
definitely
explore that.
separates itself from those
Yeah,
examples visually for sure.
yeah, but like where would it? I mean,
Oh man,
rank in there like that's hard.
I'm trying to think of like just another like a more like a side by side comparison I can make in terms of like quality for like a good serial killer movie, but nothing's come to mind. I'm sure off camera I'd have
like
a
I'm
couple
trying
examples for you, but
like if I had to think of lesser ones off the top of my head, and by lesser I mean I still enjoy them, but they're not on the same level as Seven or Silence of the Lambs. Like the Bone Collector is entertaining, but
right, I haven't seen.
I might give The Cell an edge over that. Kiss the Girls is another one with Ashley Judd that is entertaining, and I hate to put The Cell in like a lesser category because there is this element of it that elevates it above those movies.
Exactly. There's just a handful of things that do bring it down a little bit, but there's enough in there to like thoroughly enjoy it and like recognize that it is like better than a lot, but it's in a weird gray area for me.
Yeah. All right, so I guess you have to score it now, and hopefully I didn't steer you in the wrong direction. I mean, you can of course, you can be 100% honest.
Yeah, no direction steering at all. I initially, when I first ended it, like first watched it, I was split. Like I didn't know which, like there was, it feels like there's two distinct, I wouldn't say halves, but two different components of the movie when it's like strictly like an FBI detective angle and when it's like the psychological thriller part, like when they're in each other's heads. And there were so many parts about each thing that I liked more than the other, but it was almost like 50-50. And I was like, couldn't reconcile that. I didn't know which part of it I liked more. So I was kind of like, I half like this movie and I half don't. But since then, like reflecting on it, watching some reviews, watching some analysis of it, because obviously I watched it and I didn't understand the significance of everything right off the bat. So reflecting on it for a little bit has bumped up that score a bit. And, even just talking about it with you and your enthusiasm for it and like recalling some of the parts of the movie, I'm going to give it a 3, but like, I want to watch it again. Like I knew right after, I was like, this was again, super intriguing. And I got to like watch some of the things that I know it clearly inspired and kind of come back. And I'm anticipating that like whenever that rewatch comes, I think this would be one I would definitely like to watch with Cam because I don't think he's seen it. And I know that I'll probably enjoy it even more once I've had that rewatch in. But for now, it's a 3 out of 5. Like a lot of fun with this movie. I'm really glad that I got to see it. And I honestly, I don't know that when or where or if I would have seen it, if not for your recommendation. So as always, thanks for getting in another movie that I don't know when I would have seen, because that's always a fun experience.
So this is what we've kind of learned across however many episodes you've been on now. You said over 100 and some odd
30-ish, yeah.
30-ish episodes, right? I think and what people that listen to the show, they continue to think that one of the best things about it is I'm from a completely different generation than you are as far as like some of these movies. Like I saw this in theaters when it came out.
Right.
And like, definitely grew up with it. Not grew up with it as a kid, but grew up with it. And but they like that part of the show that it's like I'm getting to show you these like things that you probably would have never guessed that you would watch ever or even think to watch.
Right.
Like wouldn't even pop up on your radar. And so I'm grateful to do that. I'm glad when you can give me something too. I mean, like you did with Coherence. I hadn't seen that. You did that with like Lake Mungo too. That was fun because I had never seen that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's always interesting because I talk to like my buddy David or JC who are like, they love movies from this era. That first thing is like, what did Jackson think of it? I was like, I don't know. we haven't talked about it yet.
Well, good news if they like The Cell, because I thought it was really wicked, different too, very different movie, but very inspiring as well. And yeah, I love it. I love lots of older movies like 80s, 90s, 2000s, but there's so much that I would have missed out, like just not growing up then, right? So it's great to get the the reason to go back and watch something like not as like mainstream from that time. And so
Yeah.
I really owe that to you.
Well, nice. That's been one of the best things about doing this. And I'm glad that you at least have fun with it, and at least visually. I mean, like again, I didn't watch it in a bit, but it was cool to like relive some of those visuals again because they are pretty, even if they are just done to be like artsy fartsy. Then I totally
they're
get
still fun to look at.
Yeah, I totally get it. I guess to kind of wrap things up, I have some questions, but I did want to ask. So like, we're going to really cover any news, but one of the big news things right now is how bad Joker 2 is doing. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. I mean, the first one opened to $96.2 million. The sequel opened to $37 million. For thinking perspective for you, the first movie on its first Friday opened to Friday was 39 million for the first movie. The Friday.
Wow.
This whole weekend is just 37. It had a massive drop from Friday to Saturday, and even bigger drop from Saturday to Sunday. It's probably going to have a bigger drop next coming weekend.
Yeah.
It opened lower than Morbius. Opened lower than the Marvels.
Boy.
And by the way, I don't see any scathing pieces about Todd Phillips and his box office, whatever. But when like the Marvels flopped, they blamed it all on the women, and like they that's how the trades kind of.
You know what? That is a great point.
But I saw it, and you said you saw it. I can totally understand why it flopped, why it didn't do well. But
do you think word of mouth is it word of mouth exclusively that made it flop, or do you think there just was no hype for the sequel?
I think word of mouth destroyed it in like a single weekend.
In a single weekend,
and a matter of I guess a day from the. I don't think the mixed reviews out of the Venice Film Festival helped because like I think after that was over, it had a 63%, and the original movie had a 69 by the end of after all the reviews were counted.
Okay.
I was like, when you start that low, you usually go lower. You don't go higher. And I think it's at a 37% now, so it's very rotten. So I kind of figured that was going to happen, and then like someone pointed out too, like now there's all these like scathing pieces about who to blame for this. It seems like they're trying to blame Joaquin Phoenix and kind of Todd Phillips for not really talking to DC Studios a lot and like doing his own thing. Some people are trying to name Lady Gaga, and I actually think she's the most innocent of the bunch.
Totally. I thought she turned in a fine performance, especially musically. I thought it was well acted. I can't take that away from it. You know what? After seeing it, I truly believe that this was just an act of self-sabotage. Like, I don't think Todd Phillips wanted to make a sequel, but Warner Brothers kind of twisted his arm. Like, obviously, the first movie was Oscar acclaimed, $1 billion box office. Like, that movie was destined for a sequel. And I think Todd Phillips was trying to teach Warner Brothers a lesson, would be the best way I could put this. And he said, I'm going to completely do whatever I want to do and not going to consider like audience appeal.
Yeah.
And I know it's not going to do great, or maybe, if it does, then that's even better. But there was nothing in here that made me think he was making this for the audience or fans of the first movie. And it really paid off. It really, not paid off. It really showed, I think, in the final product. Like, I really did not go in. I went and saw this on a Sunday Sunday. And I truly didn't think it was going to be as bad as the reviews were saying at the time. Like, I didn't really see anything mixed. I saw like all pretty much negative. And I was like, okay, like it's all, it's the original, it's the director, it's the same studio. I really like the trailers.
Pretty much all the creatives behind it.
All the creatives, exactly.
I think was it on our anticipated, both of our anticipated list?
Yep. Then the trailers came out. I was pretty hyped. I was, skeptical about it being a musical. That grew on me after the trailers. I already knew Joaquin and Lady Gaga could sing, so I didn't really have any issues there. And then I saw it. I was like, oh my God, I really am not enjoying myself. I liked most of it until we got to the courtroom scenes, and then the movie just kind of fell off a cliff for me.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting like a Law and Order courtroom procedural, and that's what it was. That's what it turned into. I think I was frustrated because technically I think it's a beautiful movie. There's some really beautiful shots in it that are like
completely agree. Well shot, well choreographed.
I think I said when I reviewed it, like some of the best shots you might find in the movie this year. Like it looks great.
Yep.
And I think Joaquin Phoenix was good again. Maybe not as good as the first time. But
maybe not as good, but good.
but good. And I thought Lady Gaga was good, but I'm hearing a lot of her scenes or some of her scenes got cut because it does seem like she was underutilized compared to like I feel like if you have her, you don't underutilize her, and I think they did.
Well, see,
And
it's interesting. I didn't get that opinion. Like, I heard that grievance about this movie before going in, and then I left thinking like she carried a lot of the musical scenes with him, and there's a lot.
yeah,
And I just left thinking that she was in it about as much as I would have expected her to be. So
I
that's
guess
been
my
one thing
thing
that I
was
haven't
like
really noticed.
I guess I felt like they used her more like a plot device rather than like a character,
Okay, sure, yeah,
and like and maybe that's what Harley is like. She is obsessed with him in a way, so she's driving him to like embrace who she thinks he truly is,
right.
and but like I mean you get Lady Gaga, you don't use her as a plot device. I mean I get it, she was in like most of the musical numbers, and that's what she probably was mostly hired for. But she can also act too. Like she's not like
Yep.
just a I mean, her first love before becoming a singer was she said was to be an actress before she even became like a
Mm,
pop star. So she can act. So it's not like you're not use her to her the best of her abilities. She can do both. So she really did kind of feel like the character felt underwritten, I guess, a little bit. Um, I expected like them to utilize her a bit more than they did. Um, but yeah, the second half of the movie where it just becomes like a courtroom drama.
yeah,
Was not my
and
bag, and
Joaquin's
I
like
mean,
weird accents while he was like being his own attorney. I
like
thought that was
representing
super
himself.
weird. Yeah.
And then a lot of people have spoiler, just in case you haven't seen it. A lot of people have made a big deal about the ending. I didn't
What are your
love. I
thoughts?
I didn't love it only because I didn't like. So I didn't. So I'll say this: I didn't think it was as like egregious as everyone else did, because when I first heard how people were reacting to it, I was like, oh, it
I
must have did
agree.
something real stupid. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, it didn't do something real stupid, but what it did do, I kind of felt like it in a way dismantled like a lot of stuff in the movie felt like it dismantled what they were trying to say in the first movie.
Absolutely. That was
And
one of my biggest problems with it.
so I mean, and I know there's a lot of quotes today from Todd Phillips saying that Arthur Fleck was never really Joker, and that's that was never who he really was. And then people are sharing scenes from the first movie where they're like, well, no, that's not what you said in the first movie. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think the ending was horrible. I get what I get what it was trying to do. I think it probably thought it was a little bit smarter than what it was,
Mhm.
by almost kind of like passing of the torch, I guess, a little bit, and like in a way. But I just thought it kind of like all that goodwill, all the things that they were saying in the first movie, it almost made that first movie pointless. Like by the time everything wrapped up in this, so between these two movies, what was the point of this like two picture narrative to
Right.
get us here? And like
And
that was like,
again, this feeds into my theory that Todd Phillips was never interested in making a sequel, and he thought this was because he said from the outset Joker was always envisioned to be a one movie affair, and he
yeah,
told the story he wanted to tell. He didn't add anything new into this one because he didn't
yeah,
want to, because I think he felt like he told the story and Warner Brothers is throwing money at him to make a movie. He had nothing to lose. So
yeah,
that's really genuinely how I feel about why he made this movie. There's nothing fresh, no interesting new angle. And like I think if he tried, he could have come up with something or continued it. But like,
yeah,
I think that he saw where this might have gone.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden we'd have another DC universe on our hands if they kept doing well. And it really just seems to me like he nipped that in the bud and now he's done
yeah,
with it. If that is
yeah.
the case, disappointing in a way, but I also sort of respect it. If that's what he was trying to do, I could
Trying
be
to
completely
do,
wrong. Because I think there's something to be said about not making a franchise out of every single well-performing movie, right? Like we can have just one
yeah.
good movie
It
and
can be
not
a one off. It can be a
and
one
I
off.
and I've been saying that for years. I think I'd be hypocritical to think that to say otherwise and
Yeah,
always praising and they kind of shitting on like the franchising of everything. So if that is what happened, then props to him. That couldn't have been an easy decision to make, like creatively.
yeah.
So, but again,
But then,
he might have been
but I
swinging
guess
for
with that
fences.
train of thought, wouldn't you have to get everybody else on board to like also self sabotage? Or maybe
Yeah,
he only knew he was self sabotaging, and everyone else was like, I think we're making something special. um, I
maybe.
don't know,
Yeah, you're right. He's not the only creative, so that could be a little bit far fetched of a theory, but
but honestly, the one aspect of the movie that everyone was probably worried about with the musical part, I actually didn't mind that at all. I thought it was fine.
I didn't mind the musical bits, but I didn't find that they did anything for the narrative, which was like a few were better than others, but I just thought,
I think
okay,
I
and I
had an
did think there was a
issue.
lot of songs too.
I
I
had
thought
the
there was
issue
too
that
much.
there was a sameness to a lot of them, at least energy wise. Like there was just like, and I guess you're not. I mean, I shouldn't be expecting Grease or anything, but like it's just like every song was just like, yes, on this level, and for the most part, but I didn't like. But I thought that angle could work. Like, I remember when I first heard it, I was like, that's weird. But the more I thought about it, I was like, no, you can actually mix that in and make that a really creative aspect of that story and make it work. But I do kind of agree with you. Like production wise, they were cool. I just don't know if they did add anything to the overall plot. I mean, I
on
guess.
that note, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard is that none of those songs were original for the movie. They were all
No, they're all like old standards, like back in the day. Yeah.
Like you're telling me, like none of those songs like could have been written to reflect what was going on in those characters' minds, and their how they had different ideas of who Arthur and Joker were, and like when their relationship started to dissolve, you couldn't have made an original song reflecting that, like what was going on in their heads. Like that is a completely missed opportunity, which again seems creatively lazy to me, and again supports me thinking that Todd Phillips was never really in on this from the beginning.
Yeah.
It was a disappointing watch for sure. I was, again, like did not expect to not like it as much as I didn't. Based on the reviews, I thought this has to be better than people are saying it is, but it just sadly was not. There's one other thing I think I wanted to mention about it, but I can't remember where I was going. So
I mean, I was just overall disappointed with it. I mean, I wanted to like it.
I wanted to like it too. I really gave it a chance.
Yeah, I was just like, ooh, I was like, it's not getting better.
No.
I was like, it's just not getting better.
I remember what I was going to say. It was about the ending, and it was actually, I did not hate the ending. There might be components about it or implications that I haven't really sat down and considered yet that might make me change my mind. But if anything, the way I'm interpreting it right now, I feel like the ending is the strongest part of the sequel in terms of how it relates to the first movie. So just to recap, like the Joker, was tired of being this down on his luck, nobody, pushed around by society, adopts his persona, sort of breaks out of his shell, commits these murders, does what he wants, goes and takes credit for it on live TV, and then, commits, this infamous assassination and kind of launches himself into stardom.
Right.
And there's those scenes where he's being escorted through the city in the cop car, and like there's the riots and all the people in the Joker masks, and he started this movement, right, where like people aren't going to take it anymore and they're going to riot and go crazy.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt like in the ending of this with I won't spoil it maybe for those that haven't seen it, but we know what happens to Arthur, and then what the other person in that scene does makes me think it kind of tied back to me to like his supporters and like the movement that he created. And this person was so upset about him abandoning that movement, which again, kind of undoes his motivations from the first movie. I get that criticism, but this is that person kind of continuing that legacy on Arthur's behalf because he refuses to do it. And that, I thought, that is a kind of a cool callback to the first movie, which is totally contrary to the last 2.5 hours I just watched.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of left it thinking like, I'm okay with how that movie ended. Might not have been how I would have written it, but I don't mind. I don't hate it like everyone is saying it's so terrible.
But I think mine was just like I was wondering how I didn't hate it the way everyone else did, because I thought it did like the way people were describing it. I thought it made like a complete hard left, and I was like, oh, please don't do that. And so I was like, oh, it just didn't go the way they wanted it, and I can understand some criticism about what it says about the events of that first movie into this one,
for sure, totally valid.
But like it was a weird I don't know. But I was like, but this all feels pointless now. I mean, but I guess not. That first movie's always going to be there, and if you want to completely,
it's always going to be there.
You can disregard this and like not even.
It's a
like,
standalone movie now, as far as I'm concerned. I will never.
Yeah, I don't need to experience this at all ever again. No. There are people that think it's going to like down the line become this like misunderstood masterpiece, and maybe it will. I don't know. Weirder things have happened. It's very
the worst movie I've ever seen.
Not at all, and it could very well. I mean, I've seen like once the discourse wears off, they'll point out how like we were so wrong about it and we should have gave it a bigger shot and we were too close-minded and blah blah blah, all that fun stuff. So I don't know. I guess we're both in the same boat that we both really wanted to like love it and did not. All right, I'll do a couple of questions from you guys because we're wrapping up here.
Sure.
For sending in at Mrs. Mary Winchester 2005. For both of you, what was your childhood film that you used to watch a lot?
Oh boy. One that comes to mind immediately, there was several, but I still have the VHS copy of this at my house of The Fox and the Hound. That movie is something that I would love to cover.
I have a friend that loves that movie.
That movie hits home. It still as an adult like destroys me. I find it so sad, but like so cathartic and nostalgic when I rewatch it. It's been several years since I've seen it, but like I could probably play that movie in my head frame by frame. Love that movie to death. I don't own a physical copy of it other than that VHS, and I do have a VHS player still at home. But on the note, I gotta go get me a copy of The Fox and the Hound. It's a movie that I really cherish with my mom. Like we've seen it a few times together too. I'm sure that's who I was watching it with as a child, but some very core memories to that movie, among several others, but most notably that's awesome movie, classic. What about you?
I feel like I should name a family film. But I watched
sad though.
I watched a lot of family films, of course, as a kid. But I'll just be honest. As a young kid, because I like scary movies a lot. The Lost Boys was one I watched a lot as a kid. I used to watch it on VHS. It would end, and I would rewind it and watch it again. That's how much I loved it. I mean, I still love it.
Fantastic movie.
It was definitely a childhood favorite that has since become like an adult favorite. Fox and the Hound, like one of my friends just brought that movie up. They love that movie. And because we were talking about Disney movies that we really liked, and they were like, everyone always talks about the Lion King and Aladdin and the Little Mermaid. Like, what about the Fox and the Hound? I was like, oh, I was like, I didn't know that you rode hard.
You want to see me cry my eyes out? Put on the Fox and the Hound.
I think so many Disney movies have that element to it too. Like they they just do that to kids sometimes.
Yeah. Like great question. I'm glad. It's nice to have thought about that movie.
That was a good question. At the Smart Alec on X wants to know: are there any genres for anniversaries that you would like to cover that you guys really haven't?
Genres,
like genres of movies. I mean,
just trying to think.
You know what we have? Well, we just talked about. I guess a musical and
that's what came to my mind too.
Your Joker. We never really covered them. I actually like musicals a lot.
I like musicals too.
But I don't think we've ever covered one even before your time on here.
Like, oh, really? Okay, that could be a first. Then I would love to cover a musical.
I know there was like, were you on when like Grease was having one of its big anniversaries and like it was on the list? It was on the list, but like
it was on the list. Yeah, I don't think we did it though.
Yeah, we didn't pick it. I like musicals. I would love to cover those more.
Sure.
I get a lot of someone told me that we wish we covered animated movies more because we don't.
I know, and I would like to as well. Actually, there's a few that I really want to watch. Maybe like some of the Disney classics, or even like I know that you've never seen any Hayao Miyazaki movies, and Cam's been on me to show you a few of those. So that would be really great to cover some of those. So maybe we could aim in the new year to do a musical and like an animated movie. It would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I've never seen The Iron Giant.
Oh yeah, that's also good. That's actually a really good movie. It's surprisingly good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yes, and we when he's less busy, we will throw in more animated movies and musicals. Because there's definitely some I would love to do. Like there's some really good ones. All right, at Spooky Switch 2022, this is for you, Jackson. How has the journey been for all the movies you've learned about from 1999 that you've done for the anniversaries?
It's been great. You know what? One thing I do really appreciate about the anniversaries, like over the course of the year, we're studying, basically looking back at 1 year in film over the course of a few months. So it's great to really, because normally, like my normal pre-podcast, my viewing habits were so completely random. I would just go watch what I was feeling like at the time. And I might go on like significant streaks of only watching stuff from like the 2010s to present, or like I might go through a 90s phase, or over the course of a week, I might watch something from the 80s, the 90s, the 2010s. and like nothing from the 2000s. So it is kind of nice to have somewhat of a structure thanks to the anniversary episodes. And I know that we cover stuff like, I know 99 was just a big year, so that we covered a lot from that year. And of course we cover stuff not just 25 years old, but there were just a lot of great movies that came out in 99. So it's kind of been like a little bit of a film history lesson, just spread out over a longer period of time. And it's been a good journey. I'm really excited because I know 2000 will have a lot of great picks too.
Yeah.
A lot of great stuff came out. And like, it's just 20, I think the 25 year in 2025, or all the anniversary years there's going to be a lot of good stuff to choose from. So I'm looking forward to continuing this in the future too, and seeing what next year brings. I can already think like Gladiator was on in my dorm the other day on the TV. That's turning 25 next year.
Yeah.
And I ended up watching like the last like third of it. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then I thought about the year 2000, all the great movies that came out. And I was like, okay, I'm really excited for that. So yeah, it's great. I like that we do anniversaries.
Yeah, there's some stuff that like, because in October, because like you're gonna be really busy, but I'm like, there's Fight Club right there, and I was like, do you leave Jackson out of Fight Club, or do you like find a way to make Fight Club work? Do you deep dive it later? Like how do you like what do you do? There's some good ones in the rest of October, like between I haven't even filled out November yet. By the time you're back on like towards December, there's like Any Given Sunday and stuff like that, which will be fun to do. But yeah, there's some ones that are left that I don't like to leave you out of them. It'll be rough.
I mean,
I know you like want to
do what you got to do. There's so many movies, you can't make them for all, but
yeah. At PJ Porton on X, what is the ideal cutoff for anniversaries as far as years? Oh, I used to not care if it was 5, but then I had a friend that said that was too early to talk.
I kind of agree. I think 5. I mean, I don't want to say that there's a limit, but
I think 10 is good.
10's good. I mean, I'm trying to think of like, that's weird. Next year, 5 years will be movies that came out in 2020, which there are not that many, but
oh yeah, because of the whole like pandemic.
I feel like if we were to do a 5-year one, it would be one that we might not otherwise really talk about to shine light on it. Because like what I like about the anniversaries that a lot of them are popular releases, but they might be ones that not everyone's watching on an annual basis or haven't watched in a while. And we're kind of like giving it its time in the spotlight because it has a birthday. And like, I feel like 5 years, like, isn't that special? Like people are still probably discovering this movie. It's fairly recent.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say never to anything as far as like far back in the past. Like, I don't think that we've ever really set a limit to ourselves. I'm trying to think of the oldest movie we've ever covered together though on the show.
Is it Alien? Have
we done Psycho?
No, actually, no? I just covered Psycho 2 on Tales of Horror, but no, I never covered the first one.
Is it Alien?
It might be Alien.
Because we don't do a whole lot of 70s. I don't find that often.
No. Oh, well,
I'd like to cover that deck.
We did talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We mixed it with the remake.
That's 74.
So that might be the oldest one. Oh, and Black Christmas was 70.
Also 74.
74. Yeah, we talked about that. So those two might be the oldest ones.
Oh, yeah, Exorcist 73.
Oh, there we go. That might be it. All right. That might be the oldest one.
This is making me think. Yeah. Anyway, one of my favorite decades in cinema. I would love to explore that decade in the future. But yeah, there's definitely some quality movies even from the 60s that I can think of that I've seen that I would love to talk about sometime. But beyond that, I haven't really seen much from pre-60s. Definitely a handful of 50s movies, but I would go back as far as the dawn of cinema to talk about something if we were both interested. But
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we both agree at 5 years is too early. I think I did something early in our run that was 5 years old. And then that's when I was told like that's way too like they were like it barely has dust on it. I was like, yeah, you're right. That's true.
True. I'll never say never. I mean, we very well might decide on a 5-year-old movie at some point, but
guess it depends on the movie. I guess I'll do 2 more at WB or W_B_Rick. Do you ever see your show actively talking about current releases each week? It's kind of hard to do it. I think the show in the beginning, before Jackson was on, was conceived as a new show, and then when we had the idea of seeing whatever new movie was out every weekend, and then I realized that it's hard to do. But like we've done it on the occasion when we've both seen the same movie, on the same weekend. Like we've talked about it. Like I saw this on Thursday, and he's like, I'm seeing it this weekend, and then we talk about it. There are shows that can do that. They do that every week. Where they there's a podcast, so the So Wizard podcast that does that every single week. They have a new guest on every week, and they see like 1 or 2 new releases every week, and they talk about it. It's just hard the way their schedules are, but I don't rule it out completely at some point. But
I'm about to chime in about that. So it's funny, when I first got on the show back early 2023, that is kind of what I envisioned for myself. I was like, okay, this is going to be a great reason for me to like go see more new releases in the theaters. I love going to the theaters. I go as often as I can. But like you see far more movies in theaters than I do. And a lot of that came down to my work schedule, my availability, all the other things that I balance. But in the new year, I'll have a very different work schedule. I'll be working like a 4-day on, 4-day off work schedule. That might give me some more time to go catch something. I don't want to make any promises yet, but I would like to go to the theaters more and see stuff. Now, I also am pretty picky, like with what I choose to go to the theaters to see. And if there's something that I know I'm not really going to like, I probably won't go out of my way to see it.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think I average somewhere between like 20 and 24 theater watches a year, which probably Gaius is super low. You're probably thinking, what the hell? But
it's pretty decent. I mean,
it's about 2 a month.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would really like to get those numbers up, and I wouldn't be opposed to trying to do that a little bit more frequently because again, I like to spend the time in the theaters, but yeah, perhaps.
I can see it being a possibility, but
there's also like streaming new releases on streaming devices.
That would be easy to do.
That we could do. That would be easy to incorporate that.
Yeah.
So perhaps maybe we'll think about that.
We can explore that in the new year, maybe, and see how that goes. At It's Tyler Culver. Are there any future plans to actually record together? Have you guys gotten so used to recording remotely? No, I mean, remote. I mean, we have to do it remotely because I'm all in LA, and
we're on the opposite side of the continent.
That's the tricky thing about this. But I don't doubt that there will be a point where he is out here, and if he is out here, that we wouldn't record together.
Oh, 100%.
Whether
that time comes,
whether I would like rent a space or whatever where we could record together or do something where we could do something together. But yeah, I mean, we have to do remote because of distance, and I think chemistry is good despite distance. So
100%. Even we got a 4-hour time difference. We battle and make it work, and it's great. But you're right. We are kind of forced into doing it this way just because of the circumstances. But I'm sure it won't be a one-time visit. There will probably be times over the years where we are in the same place, and we will always take advantage of that when it happens. Again, just this new year that's coming up will be big in terms of I'll be entering a new job. It's going to open up some availability for me. I'll have more recourse to go out and visit you out in California. And even like, who's to say, I would really like to go like maybe to a film festival together at some point in the future and meet halfway or something. Like that would be a great chance to sit down and get some episodes out. So yeah, definitely plans without a doubt. We've talked about it many times before, just a matter of when.
Yeah. And I think that kind of piggybacks off of, other things that we want to do for the show. Like I would, next year, like you said, like look into film festivals that logically we both could go to that aren't like too out of the way or something like that for either one of us. So that's something we think about, and then we will figure out when it'll happen. It'll be really cool. It'll be really fun.
Oh yeah. Can't wait.
But yeah. I think and what I noticed that a lot of people run their shows this way, so it's not just us. I mean, I know people that live in LA that don't record together, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah. I think even if we live in the same city, maybe we wouldn't necessarily do every episode that way.
So together, but like they haven't recorded any together, and I was just like, that's hilarious. They just do it remotely, but it is easier, and I think doing it this way has opened this up for a lot of people to do this because you can be anywhere and get it done. But that is a goal for us to not just be friends over the
100%.
Like I think like I tell Jackson all the time, like my friends are always like, I just don't understand how you guys get along so well, and because you don't hang out. But I mean, like
this feels like hanging out.
I know this is pretty much hanging out. We're just not in person. And then like over the course of the 137 episodes we've been on, like friendship has grown like organically, and like it's not just
Definitely.
us talking about the show. Like, we learn things about each other. So I've enjoyed the journey. It's been really good.
Absolutely. I wouldn't change it for anything. It's been a blast. It's it's flown by. It's something I look forward to doing every week. Obviously, not so much lately because I've not had every week to do it, but it's something that I miss in my daily routine. So, or weekly routine, I should say. So, yeah, it's definitely a part of my life that I really, really cherish and don't plan of letting go anytime soon. So, it's been great. Again, cheers to 200 episodes. It's been great. It's been awesome to cut some time away to do this again tonight. So thanks for making the time, and thank you guys, everyone listening, and for supporting us through all these episodes. And yeah, it's surreal. It's great. I can't wait for 300.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know I didn't use a person's question who said, "What is your end game?" We don't have one. We don't have there isn't one. I mean, I don't want to think about like when it ends. Like I think you said it earlier that it's all more about how it evolves. So that's how we think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no what was your last episode being like? No, like we're gonna keep it going as long as you guys want to listen to it.
Exactly. I guess that's an important part. As long as we got people tuning in, we'll give you something to listen to.
And thankfully, playlist is good about letting us know if things aren't, and they haven't let me know that. So like everything's good.
Good.
they haven't let me know like, oh, hey guys, fix this. But yeah, everything's been great, and I've been really excited about the show, and I'm glad that Jackson continues to be excited about the show, and looking forward to the next 100 episodes myself. So there's that. All right,
fantastic.
Jackson, sign this one off.
Okay, guys. Well, no need to recap what episode we're on. Thank you guys so much, not just for tuning in today, but for all of you guys that are return listeners, or even if it's your first time. Thanks for tuning in to listen to us talk about movies today. It's been fantastic. I've enjoyed every episode we've ever chatted about. Gaius, as always, you're fantastic. Guys, if you guys are a first-time listener, or if you guys got some friends maybe that you think would enjoy this kind of content, let them know they can find us anywhere you guys plug in the name Back to the Blockbuster. That's anywhere you guys listen to your podcasts, particularly playlists. If you guys got any sort of smartphone, you can find the playlist app on your smartphone home device. So download it there and listen to Back to the Blockbuster. They are our podcast network, and they give us so much support, so we want to give them some love. We guys will see you guys on episode 201 shortly enough, and hopefully, I'm not exactly sure when I'll be back to cover something for the Tales of Horror, but you guys will see and hear my voice here shortly. Until then, guys, thanks again for tuning in. It's been a great episode. Gaius, as always, thanks for being such a great co-host, and I will see you shortly.
Same to you, and thank you guys for 200 great episodes. Thank you for listening.